while they do have the dominant, effort in um, cultural influence, like we'll take Fox News for an example. A lot of people credit Fox News for being the biggest name in news. They have the most viewers and always have,
Right.
and it's because they're the only ones that in the mainstream. That's look, okay. As far as mainstream goes, the top of the mainstream, the cable news networks that have been around for fucking decades, that mainstream. Of course, there's things like Breitbart and the Daily Wire and whatnot that are mainstream conservative sources. Um, it's questionable whether Breitbart should be mainstream, but the thing is, I really shouldn't even say Breitbart and Daily Wire in the same sense because they're not even remotely the same thing. But as far as like cable news network mainstream goes, Fox News is a lone wolf, and it's the only conservative outlet out there, and they're overly arrogant about it. They know that people flock to them because they're the only voice, whereas on the other side, there's this plethora of options. It's much more diversified on the left. For as far as news sources go,
Yeah,
it's
no, it's definitely way more diversified, yeah.
yeah. As
Which is why
far
the left has a problem organizing sometimes and actually winning elections. I mean, they're
yeah.
they are fragmented, which I think is a good thing overall. Like, you want different ideas and stuff like that, but you can't have it to the point where you can't get a candidate elected.
Well, see,
You know what I mean?
both sides are pretty well fractured throughout, like really, I don't not really about equally or anything, but the thing is, the conservative base, the Rust Belt Republican types, those people are incredibly numerous, and while the right may have
Yeah.
just as many different factions, each of those little side factions is much smaller than all the little side factions you have on the left, because, you know, there's a thing about left-wing politics that's just never satisfied. There's never a satisfying politician that you can hang your hat on and say, okay, this guy might fuck up, but he's going to get the things I really care about, or at least he preaches that he's going to get the things I care about most done. There's never really kind of been that person for the left, except for Barack Obama, and I think like that's a longer conversation, but let's go ahead and start this. Like, one thing I want to touch on first. He mentioned this here in the intro. Um, Ben Shapiro often does get pretty maliciously maligned in ways that is just really uncomfortable to have a conversation with, and like we kind of touched on this in the last stream me and you did together, and like I said something kind of stupid like because of the yarmulke you can't be a fascist, but I think really more to revise that. I think honestly people call him a Nazi a lot, and I think you might okay you want to argue whether or not he has fascist tendencies, he's an authoritarian, all these sort of things. You can have that argument, but he literally does get called
Right.
a Nazi all the time. And Sam, I don't know, I don't remember Sam going quite into that much detail, but like that's the fact that you have to have $600,000 worth of security, and they mentioned that a few times, and it's like that's just
Yeah, I did remember that. I do remember that.
that's insane. Just 2 years ago, he went there, and it was $15,000 for the place to invite him to have to set up the event, which I still think is crazy because one comparison that they made was Ben Shapiro to Milo Yiannopoulos, and I think it's a very important distinction because if you listen to both these guys, which I do listen to both of them, I see Milo as a comedian, and Ben is a legitimate political thinker. He has actual things that he wants to commentate on, and he has legitimate opinions that he is trying to push into legislation. Okay, so like they're both good for different things. Um, Milo gets a lot of attention, and for whether you like it or not, like I don't, you're not going to meet a person on this planet that says they agree with everything Milo says. I disagree with 99% of the shit that Milo says. But he has an important impact that gets people involved, and it's much of the same thing with Trump. People who were sort of disillusioned, disinterested in politics, suddenly become interested and start looking into things a bit deeper, and they end up discovering guys like Ben Shapiro who are to be taken a bit more seriously. Well, actually, I shouldn't say a bit more, much more seriously than Milo Yiannopoulos. Milo Yiannopoulos is a showman. He's a big LED arrow pointing at the right. And, he's kind of good to get people involved, but past that, he doesn't have a whole lot to actually contribute past that, if you get what I mean. You know,
Right.
not a great deal of new ideas come out of him. He's really just mostly full of jokes more than anything else. Jokes that he just knows get under people's skin, and he's trying to bring this sort of youthful atmosphere back to the right wing. Whereas, after the Occupy Wall Street movement, the entire Occupy movement, that had sort of died off because you had things. If these days when you talk about things like Antifa is like the big riot protest group that goes around the country that everybody focuses on these days. During the Occupy movement, it was a lot of just general libertarians, general anarchists that weren't specifically classified as any sort of specific anarchist faction or anything like that. But you had the occasional ANCAPs and just hardcore libertarians, shit like that. Those are the people that sort of were made up all of the Occupy movement. It wasn't
See,
very
I don't
much.
know, man. I went and I filmed some of them on my phone. I wish I
There was some
still had
liberal
saved the
hippies.
videos. No, I don't know, man. I experienced a lot. I experienced a lot of people that had liberal economic views.
Oh, I'm sure
That was
they
the
did.
majority. That was the majority of what I experienced being there, and a
Libertarians
lot of
can
the
range
messages.
from
You
libertarians
know,
can range from ANCAPs to communists, man. I'm sure you
I
did.
understand that,
Yeah. But
and
like,
all these names. I know that language has meanings and stuff, but all these different factions that we name off and stuff. At the end of the day, to me, these names, like whether you're whatever, an anarchist or you're this or you're that, I know it has ramifications, but at the end of the day, the policy team. I mean, we had this conversation in the last stream. I kept trying, like, policy is what's most important, right? I mean, culture is important. I'd love to have discussion
oh,
about
I'm not just talking
culture.
about
I mean, I've
culture. I'm talking
you
about
know like
people's political, like
right,
their
but what I'm saying
philosophy.
is like what policy views do they have, right? So um,
Well,
someone might
it's
be
more about
someone
restructuring.
might be a right wing Christian, right? That thinks that women have their place in the kitchen and all these ideas that I really don't agree with. But whatever, I'm really not concerned with how they think as much as I am
What
concerned
they want
with
to
what
do.
policies they're trying to get put right into play, right? So I mean, I don't know if there I'm sure there are people that maybe they think that a woman's place is in the kitchen and blah blah blah, but they don't necessarily write those policies. Now they might write economic policies that I disagree with, but they're not trying to push women to have to be in the kitchen, right? Or I
I
mean, I
mean,
know
I
that's
I just
outlandish
don't
because
even
that
see
wouldn't
how
even
you could
happen in
go
today's
about.
day and age. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I just don't even see how you could go about even begin like starting to get women out of the workforce if that's actually something anybody wanted to do.
no, you
I don't
can't. And
even
that
see it
was
as
just
an
an that was an
achievable.
extreme example I used as
Yeah.
why I think that a person's thinking isn't as important to me as I guess their actions, right? Like we're like you know, money talks and bullshit walks, right? So, um,
Well,
when I
the
look at
thing
it,
is, a lot of
when I
people.
look at someone and a candidate,
Mm,
often people look at their ideas, which are important. I'm not saying they're not important, but they never rarely do the normal kitchen table folks bring up voting records, which is I think is far more important than what a person says on Fox News or CNN in a panel, or what they may say in an interview, or I mean that's to me, that's one of the problems with American politics is everybody's worried about ideas and these labels of what this person is. Oh, you're an anarchist, you're a libertarian, you're this and you're that. I don't
well,
care about that. What policies are you trying to get into our government? That's what's
the
important
thing is,
to
when
me.
you talk to a
And that's
lot of
I
conservatives, you're not going to hear a whole lot of that because a lot of their policies, for the most part, are already in place, and a lot of times just really aren't really being enforced. Like a lot of their solutions end up being sort of societal solutions, and that's generally their way of thinking because it really, it even extends to their economic views that they depend more on the market to handle problems than they do the government to do so. In most cases, there's hypocrisy that you'll definitely find where they want the government to be involved in certain things. And I think a lot of people do make a conflation between small government and no government, and they start pointing out hypocrisy where there really is none, because the state obviously does have necessary roles. If I had to put one person in office, and like as far as policy decisions I agree with on the most, it would probably be Ben Shapiro. But like I would definitely, if Ben Shapiro were to run for president, I would vote for him, like no questions asked. It would. I mean, the guy's got a very clean record. He's a generally very good person. He's a very generous, charitable person.
I
He's
never.
a lot of people have a lot of negative opinions of the guy, and that's understandable. But he's definitely very arrogant, and he's pretty young to be that arrogant. I'll say that.
Why the obsession about the market now, though? I understand in the '80s, I understand the '70s, I understand the throughout. But why still the obsession with the free market when we know that the free market is its time is in the barrel? It's going to die, and not because it's bad or because it's good or because it should or because it shouldn't. It's because technology is essentially going to kill the free market.
Well, that's what I ultimately
So
believe as
so why
well.
are
But
we
I don't
obsessing? Why do we still obsess over it? Why do we still
because
elect
the
people that clamor on about the free market?
two
Why
two
aren't we
two
why aren't we
things.
electing people that are looking towards the future?
Well, two things. Okay, there's two types of people that generally worry about the market being left for the most part no unnecessary regulations is generally what I'm trying to get across. And the freer the market generally free their people. But of course, you also have to worry about corporate oppression in ways as well. Trust me, I've experienced it plenty of times. Never, never anything to the extent like you'd see in other countries, but there are there are two types of people that generally want the market to thrive more than we allow the government to control things. And there's the people who are just, on a principle, on conservative principles. They're pro-capitalism, they're pro-free market, and that's just what they've been taught, and that's what they know. For me personally, like we talked about before, I do believe that eventually technology will eliminate the market and make it obsolete and we won't need it anymore. I don't think we've reached that point quite yet. We're definitely progressing towards that.
No, we're
There's
not here
been,
now. No, I know we're not there
yeah,
now.
yeah,
Definitely. I mean, and I definitely I guess there that goes back to ideology and policy, right? So for me, anyway, the idea of the free market and let the market handle it, I actually agree with that principle, right? I am as much as I am for socialized medicine and education, I'm very much a free market capitalist for the most part, right? Like,
yeah.
let the market handle it. There are just a few exceptions in which I think it's immoral to let the market handle it, blah, blah, blah. They can go into my ideology, but for the most part, let the market handle it. However, one reason that I don't vote for Republicans is because the idea that they say is great, right? So we can say between Democrats and Republicans, Republicans are ideologically, you would side with them if you wanted a free market, a more free market, and you would side with Democrats if you wanted a less free market ideology, right? Like we can agree on that ideologically. Okay. However, that's fine and dandy. But the policies, back to the policies. Ideology is fantastic, but policies are what really matter. That's what really affects people.
Yeah,
Unnecessary
and
regulations. Okay, unnecessary regulations. I'm all about killing, sure. But Republicans get into office and they don't just kill unnecessary regulations. They kill regulations that keep people safe. Okay, they keep people they kill regulations that keep people from being poisoned and like dying and getting injured and stuff like that. That's the
I would say
problem
I need
that I
some
have.
examples of that. I don't. That's quite extreme. I'll take your word on for the sake of the conversation, but
I
like
mean, oh, hold on now. You wouldn't agree that Republican policies, I mean, they're very lax on polluters and I mean, I'll find some examples, most definitely. I
I
mean,
de
I just can't believe, I just can't believe. I think there's no question the Republican Party is like they favor corporate interest way more than the Democrats. So of course they let polluters pollute, and all to save a dime. I mean, right? You know,
I'll
what I mean, they
definitely
let.
say they're not really ones to punish corporations as much. Like it again comes back to their dependence on the market to handle the issue. They expect there to be a societal response that will hopefully economically punish, financially punish the corporation that is responsible for whatever has been done wrong. That's generally the idea. And as far as policy goes, there's not really a whole lot you can actually do to enforce that. It takes the society at hand to act on that. That is often what's lost when people become disillusioned with politics and disinterested altogether, is that those sort of
That's
things.
not true though. If you're I don't know, like that the oil spill in West Virginia
Yeah.
that poisoned the river that poisoned all those people's water. If it was legitimately an accident, yes, your company should. The government. I'm sorry, that's the government's role, in my opinion. They should be forcing the company to take action
Yeah.
against that to clean up their own mess. It's their responsibility. If I spill motor oil in the creek, it's my responsibility to clean it,
I
right?
absolutely agree, by the way.
Okay, hold
I
on though.
yeah.
If if you did it because of negligence or because you're cutting corners, you should be thrown in jail. And I know that both parties don't throw these people in jail like they should, right? I'm not just blaming the Republicans for not throwing corporate people in jail that need to be thrown
Mhm.
in jail. But I'm sorry, I mean the Republican platform itself is I was just like trying to stop free energy. And actually, to me, that's against the free market. All the, you know what I mean? Like trying to save coal mining
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? Install like trying to stall out free energy. Like that is what the
Here's
market
what
wants is
yeah.
solar and wind. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
eh,
But
I mean, come on.
here's what I'll say. Like, I think at the end of the day, what we're talking about is corporatist protectionist policies being put in order to protect certain corporations from staying afloat, even though no matter the mistakes they're making, no matter how many
Yeah,
poor things they're doing to the world and to workers and everything like that. I do strongly believe in uh, workers' rights, environmental protections, consumers' rights, all sort of things that the government can do to protect people from bad actors in the market, and that is important. There are roles for that, like where it's necessary, and like one of the things I argue about with a lot of people on the right all the time is they want to privatize everything. They want to get everything privatized because it's important for it to be privatized for it to be protected. That's their view, and you can't privatize things entirely like the police or and any sort of security agency or anything like that. We can't privatize the FBI. We can't privatize the CIA. We can't have everything being disconnected from our government. Our government has to be in charge of the absolute most basic necessary things. And in my view, nothing past that. So, things like universal health care are included in that for me. I think healthcare is an absolute basic necessity for life, obviously. And there's a lot of people who, my general view is that if you have the ability to pay more to receive I don't want to say better service, but unessential service, non-essential service, essentially things that are primarily cosmetic, like not. I have no problem with the state paying for a kid with a what do you call it the, that when they had that messed up lip that goes up into the nose. I forget the name of it. Um,
cleft lip.
yeah, it's cleft palate. That's it. I have no issue with the state paying to resolve an issue like that. Um, anything that is not necessary for your health though, anything like that, besides major deformities like burn victims and shit like that. If you were in a car crash, I don't have an issue. Like people who are in terrible accidents, people who actually need the help, that's fine. Like I'm totally good for the state and my tax dollars going towards everything involved in any life saving or even just um, for the sake of their health, necessary procedures, all that stuff I do believe should be covered by a universal government healthcare system. I think that's entirely reasonable. Um, really, I can't really like off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything past just totally voluntary, unnecessary cosmetic surgeries that I would not cover under universal healthcare. I would have that be left up to you buying, your own insurance past what the government provides, and you can obtain that yourself because that's really, but not talking about okay, again like people who are in car accidents, burn victims, all that kind of stuff. If
I
it's
know you're
not
saying like
necessary
just
cosmetic
getting a
surgery.
boob job
Yeah,
or
boob jobs and
right.
I don't but I don't and this is where a lot of people start disagreeing with me. I don't believe in transitioning children's genders. I believe you should at least be the age of 14. Usually that's when people have gone past the majority of their puberty. Like
Um,
not maybe
I could
15,
probably
16 you could
you could
say.
probably agree with being of a older age before you make that decision. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily um
I
I
just
wouldn't
don't
look at
agree
that
with
as
chopping a
barbaric
5-year-old boy's
or
dick off at 5 years old, at 5 years old because
well,
he
I
said
just
he's a
don't think the
girl.
5-year-old's in a position to really. make that decision.
Yeah, their brain's not developed enough. It's a
Yeah,
part of
flat
the
out. I
decision
mean, if
making.
he feels that way when he's 15, I have no problem with it.
Yeah,
I
if
mean, it
you're an
doesn't
adult, you
affect
should be able to
me.
do whatever you want to do
You
with your
know,
body. If you're an
yeah,
adult,
I mean,
consenting adults do things that they want that you might find bizarre all the time, and that's just their thing. But let's go ahead and get into the stream here before we start
all
talking
right,
too long.
all
We
right.
got like an hour or so here with the
Yeah,
actual
let's try to
debate.
go. Yeah.
We'll skip past the intro here. What time did you say the intro was over?
Eight. I think I'm at 8:59
Okay.
or eight. Yeah, I'm at 8:59, I believe. So like the 9 minute mark, I think.
Yeah, let's just go straight from 9 minutes.
All right.
Okay, I'm at 9:01. I can't fucking get in between
All right. You're at 9.
9:01, but yeah.
All right. Hold on a second. Let me.
For some reason,
Don't play it yet.
Yeah.
4, 3, 2, 1, play.
There we go.
Thank you. Okay, well, sorry for the late start. I'm going to jump right into it because we have a lot to talk about. I've got two guests tonight, and the first is a mathematician. He has a PhD from Harvard, and he has held research positions at Harvard and MIT and Hebrew University and Oxford. You may have heard him before on my podcast. He is one of the most interesting people I have ever met, and honestly, that's saying a lot. And he has, along with his brother, Brett, who I just did a podcast with last night in Seattle, he has become one of the most valuable defenders of free speech in our time. So please welcome Eric Weinstein. Thank you for coming. And our next contestant is the editor-in-chief of dailywire.com. He is the host of the Ben Shapiro Show, so guess his name, which is the top conservative podcast in the nation. He is the author of 7 books, and he has been a nationally syndicated columnist since the age of 17. Pity he got such a late start. He's a graduate of UCLA and Harvard Law School. Please welcome Ben Shapiro. Thank you for coming. So we have a lot to get into here, and there are areas of agreement. I mean, many of you know who these two guys are, and you know, you can imagine the course we're going to chart here. I want to start with Ben because he's had a truly unusual experience, and many of you may not be aware of just how unusual. And this will take us into areas of agreement, Ben, where we definitely agree, which is around the primacy of free speech and how strange our national conversation is on so many topics. So Ben is, if you don't know, is the person who, when he goes to Berkeley, Berkeley University, requires $600,000 worth of security to give a speech. We have a little bit less security here tonight, so please behave yourselves. But so it's a bit, Ben, what's been going on? What has it been like to be you in the last 2 years?
Confusing. I've always been a little bit bewildered by the scope of the opposition at these college speeches because I don't actually think that my message is supremely controversial. It's pretty mainstream conservative. And yet, when I show up on campuses at Cal State Los Angeles, there was a near riot. When I went to Berkeley, obviously, they required a fair bit of security, thanks to Antifa. And when I was at DePaul University banned me outright. They threatened to arrest me if I stepped foot on their campus, even though the students had invited me. University of Wisconsin, they actually tried to pass a law banning the heckler's veto, basically, after I spoke at University of Wisconsin. So I think it has far less to do with me than it does with this kind of mood in the country that's so polarized and so crazed. And I would say, with regard to college campuses, unique to the political left. I'm not seeing a lot of it from the political right. The political right certainly has its own problems at this point in time. But what's going on campuses is something that, I've been speaking on college campuses for most of my career, so 15 years. And only in the last couple have I needed security. The first time I ever required security guards was last year. And now, every place I go, I have to have security guards when it's a public event. So,
and you're getting it from both sides in a way that's completely surreal. Because, so for instance, you were often disparaged as a Nazi or a white supremacist. And
yeah,
yet you were,
it's the yarmulke that gives me away on that one.
Yeah. But even if you were not going to notice the yarmulke, you were actually the most targeted victim of anti-Semitism in 2016?
Yeah, among journalists on Twitter anyway. Yeah.
It is upside down. And you're also often compared to your former Breitbart colleague, Milo Yiannopoulos, right? And that's an unfortunate pairing.
Did you pause it? You there, dude?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was muted there, so I wasn't like breathing into the stream.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm at 1403.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm at 1427.
All right. Just go back to 1403 real quick. I stopped right
All
there.
right.
Right after he talked about the he compared him to Milo Yiannopoulos and a Nazi and a white supremacist, all these things, the yarmulke and all that. We are on the same video, right? Right on Sam Harris's channel.
Yeah, Waking Up with Sam Harris, number 112, the intellectual dark web. No, I just heard it. He was just, he just made the yarmulke comment, and
see, like that does
anti-Semitism.
That does perfectly just showcase everything that is ridiculous about the movement that is going against these figures right now. Like, Milo is a different case. Milo is a provocateur. And Coulter is very much the same way. Those people are intentionally trying to spark conflict, and they say things that they know are inflammatory. I think Ann Coulter very much less so. She is a bit more serious than Milo. Milo is a performance artist, 100%. And there's no getting around it. He's nothing more than a performance artist. So it's like the comparisons, first of all, to Ben Shapiro and Milo are just absolutely absurd, and there's a feud between them. They've been sort of talking about debating and avoiding each other one way or another for years now, and they represent two different sides of the right now, and it's very interesting because obviously Milo is incredibly pro-Trump. He was Trump's biggest advocate during the election.
Right.
And Ben Shapiro was sort of the head figure, the figurehead, I would say, of the Never Trump movement. He's the largest conservative podcaster in the country, and he was strongly against Trump the entire election. He didn't vote for him. I don't think he voted for anybody, as far as the president goes. And he's still very strongly anti-Trump. He criticizes Trump, I think, more than any other conservative podcaster or commentator of any sort that I'm aware of. And but he also gives him credit when it's due. And that is the thing I respect, and that is what I basically try to do with Trump. I don't want to praise Trump for everything he does because I don't agree with everything that Trump says, obviously. I don't think there's a fucking person on this earth. I don't care if he fucking doped him up with 1 million drugs and just fed him Trump tapes for hours, because you get anybody to agree with even 10% of what Trump says. I don't think it's possible. You could grill people on shit, and they're going to tap out eventually. But the thing is, again, Trump and Milo are very easily comparable figures because they speak to a certain crowd, and it's a crowd of people that just, they want to hear things put in basic terms, and that is like the primary thing that attracts them to it. And people are tired of robot speak, and I say this all the time, and people don't get what I mean. And it's not just Hillary Clinton, it's not just the Democrats that do this. You know, like there's just people that just want to pull all that shit out. Guys like Jeff Sessions, guys like Rex Tillerson, guys like all these robots that are still in the administration. You know, like it's ridiculous. Like we have to weed these people out. And the thing is, Trump, if Trump did anything, he broke that you know, like barrier, the language barrier between people. It's like there's a lot of people, like I said, like they just they don't want to
I
they don't want to
guess.
feel bullshitted.
I, I guess, but that's funny because to me because
I know.
it's
I
like
don't
that
100%
blues.
agree
It's
with
like
it,
that
but I
Blues
understand.
Travelers song, and when he say it doesn't really matter what I say. It's just about how I say it. I forget the exact lyrics, but that's what gets me to actually borrow from Sam Harris. Actually, Trump has such poverty of like thought
Yeah.
and like words, and to me,
Well, hold on.
you know,
Here's
someone
what
can
I would
call me
say.
an elitist or anything they want, but I'm
No, I'm
sorry,
not gonna.
I
No,
will.
I'm not gonna get
I
into
know, I
that.
know. It's okay though, but I'm not even actually pointing towards you. I'm actually pointing towards there is this, anyone who
I
has
know.
an opinion that someone is wrong, and that all of a sudden is an elitist. But I will not accept that as, to me, it's almost like I'm supposed to be coddling a child in the sense that, i- in the sense that, oh, I'm so sorry you're sick of these politicians, so now I'm supposed to excuse you being um, snake
A bit
by this
incompetent, let's
snake oil
say.
salesman. You know
A
what I'm
bit. Well,
saying? Like
okay.
I just don't.
I would say a bit incompetent, but the point I would say is in his old age, he's definitely become like a bit of a babbling oaf. But I would really encourage you to go back and look at a lot of the things from he was when he was much younger and he spoke much clearer. He actually, he's not a genius by any means,
No,
but you really,
no.
he has not changed a whole lot of his actual policy positions in fucking 20 years from what I've seen. Like you just go back and listen to him when he was talking on Oprah's show. Every time he was there, and there's a lot of great interviews with him back in his 30s and 40s. He's been a well-known public figure for a very fucking long time, and I think you would look at it differently if you saw him in a younger, perhaps more mature. I think a lot. He's one of those guys, like much like a lot of New Yorkers, or much like a lot of people who are just sort of brash
I've
old
watched
businessmen.
videos. I'm well aware. I guess what I'm saying. Why does that even matter? Why is that even relevant? So when I was
I
a
just think it would make you
21-year
look
old,
at
I
him a little
was
bit
I was
differently
like
in general.
a party first, didn't give a damn about politics or academia or anything really. I was much different 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago than I am now. I mean, I was just all about let's do some drugs and sleep with some women, you know. It doesn't matter. What matters is now, the person he is now. And again, I don't care what his ideas are. I mean, even during the election, he said that at one point, I believe it was either just before the election or during the election. I think it was during the election. He said something like, "Yeah, everyone should have health care, right?"
Hmm.
It doesn't matter what his beliefs are. It doesn't matter what Hillary Clinton's beliefs are. It matters what
It,
policies they're going to put forth. It
well,
matters what laws. It matters what is going to be enforced in the country. That's what truly matters.
yeah, but one
Yes,
leads to
ideas matter
another.
because they do not, though.
But but that's
They
they
do not
do.
always.
Look,
I won't
well
say that they
then,
always.
look at
Sometimes they
Trump's
do, but
streak of
they do not.
executive orders. Look at Trump's streak of executive orders. It's a perfect case for what I'm saying. Yeah, dude, their ideas directly affect what they're going to do. Trump went in there and just put guns blazing, essentially, with his executive orders in especially the first 100 days. It was just one after the other, multiple times a week. And see, trust me, the guy, first of all,
I get it, but what my point is, okay, that's great that he did something, but is that something good or bad for the American people? That's
well,
the
it
point.
depends
It
what you're
doesn't.
talking about.
Everybody touts these accomplishments of people, and not just Trump. Like everybody wants to say, well, they did this and they did that. Well, what is the substance of what they did? See, this
There's
this is
few
a
things
this is
he's
a
done
problem
so
in
far that
American
have been pretty
politics as well,
impactful.
as it's very shallow.
Well, I know one thing is like my taxes are going down this year.
My
My
taxes are
parents'
going down for
taxes
about
are going
3
down.
years, and then my
Yeah,
taxes are going up.
I think, first of all, I don't expect any tax plan to ever last 3 years. Something's eventually going to change about it. Like,
Well, if you're a corporation, I mean, I know that okay, another president or another party can probably go in and redo it. But if you're a corporation, you can expect the tax cuts to permanently go, I mean, affect you. So, and that's another problem too. It's really a slap in the face that it's a slap in the face, man. The Republican Party of today. So let's just not say conservatives or libertarians. Let's just say the Republican Party. We don't even have to
yeah,
talk about their constituents. We just talk about the leaders or the
yeah,
people in
the
charge or whatever.
politicians.
Okay, the Republican Party is essentially, blatantly, they don't even hide it anymore. They use these great buzzwords, but everybody with half a brain knows they're bullshit. Okay, like job creators. No one creates jobs when they have tax cuts. They might for like a second, but it all goes to the shareholders. I mean, this has just been proven. You can go online. It's very easy information to look up. Corporations do not. They're not benevolent in their giving of money. Okay, they just blatantly rob the middle class to give to the upper class. If you want to talk about socialism, the Republican Party is one of the biggest, you know, perpetrators of socialism
I
in
don't
this
see how
freaking
that's
country, and
socialism.
just an opposite way.
I don't see
Or
how
the
that's
concept of it.
socialism.
You know, you're taking from one, you're giving. That's what they always say. You're taking from one, you're giving to another. You're taking from one, you're giving to another. How about stop taking? I don't even want to take
I
from the
don't
rich
believe.
and give to me. I just want you to people that they have 4 yachts already. If they don't get a fifth one, I'm not crying. Like, maybe this little kid could not die over here. Okay,
Yeah.
over something that's not his choice. That's all I'm saying. Right? Like, maybe this
I know
kid
what
could
you're
not
talking
die
about
for something
personally.
that's not his choice, and maybe this guy could not have another fucking yacht. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
he'll
I
be
understand
okay.
that.
He'll be okay. You know?
Yeah, I definitely understand. I don't believe that every time a corporation gets a tax break, they should just give all the extra money to the shareholders. I experienced that in my own personal life. The company I currently work for, that is the case with my own job. You know, like I know their taxes are going down, and I know I'm not getting a raise anytime soon. And so, you know, I don't
Right?
want to get too personal with myself, but like the thing is, it's
No,
just like
it's
I
very
understand
personal though.
exactly what you're talking about. My issue is
I mean, do you get
what
a
exactly do we do about this though? Like, do we
do you
put
get
restrictions? Hold on, like let me
go ahead.
ask something quick. So what exactly do we do about this though? I've thought about this a lot because this is one of the things where I think it's really more of a matter of ignorance on behalf of the Republican Party, uh, with their faith that corporations, or their supposed faith that corporations will be more generous to their employees if they get tax breaks and whatnot, and not just give it more to their shareholders. I think it's more of a thing of
I think I
incompetence.
want to stop you on that one. If you're talking about like me going down to Cameo Grill and like, you know, probably mostly Republicans sitting in there, you know, drinking a beer, yeah, okay, I can contribute that to ignorance or being naive.
I'm talking about the
But but
politicians.
but politicians, no. I do not
Uh,
think it's faith. I think they
Dude,
know damn well. I think most of them know damn well, especially the ones that have been in business for a while. I mean, come on, man. We tried this experiments. Anyone who
pretty
has
sure
half
Sam
a
Harris
brain
himself.
in their head knows that trickle down economics is a failed concept. Now, whether the Democrats have the answer is
I
not the
think it's
question.
failed
That
every
maybe
time
they
they
don't
tried.
either, but it has been failed every time they try.
And
And why has it failed
that's
every
due to
time?
corporate greed, and
Exactly for the same reason.
it's either negligence or ignorance. And I think a lot of people try to bring it into the more conspiratorial realm, where it's like, you know, they got each other's hands in their pockets and whatnot. And that's true. That's true for many politicians. They do got their hands in the pockets of corporations and banks and all these sort of things, and we all know that. And you
Dude,
know, it's very open these days.
look
Um,
who writes these bills. There's no conspiracy. That's why I say, like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
no, I'm not
There, it
saying you
takes
are.
no conspiracy to realize the fact that powerful, wealthy people want to maintain their power and their wealth,
Yeah,
and
that's
they will
obvious.
do almost anything to do it. And I'm not talking about the Illuminati. I don't believe in any of that.
I'm not
But if
talking
you
about
look
that
at
either. I
who
know what you're
writes
talking
these
about.
bills, do you know who wrote? Look up, Google who was involved in writing the tax bill. Many lobbyists for
The Trump tax
corporations,
bill that just
essentially.
passed.
Yes. Well, you can say the Trump tax bill. I can give Trump some credit for just being kind of a figurehead, but Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, man, the Republican Congress, man, and Orrin Hatch, they're really the ones that kind of orchestrated this.
Mm. I'm looking for an article right here. It was just a list of all the people who were involved in writing it. Um,
Not to mention it's the least popular. I mean, that's political. Maybe they are naive because it's looks like political suicide on the surface.
I don't. Why exactly would you say that?
What's that?
Why exactly would you say that?
I mean, since Trump's been in office, they have not passed a popular piece of legislation. I mean, you can't
Oh,
just
that's
appeal to
not
your
true.
base to win an election, dude. Yeah, to their base. You're just looking at their base, man. You
I'm
have
not
to
just
look
talking about
at.
that. I'm not
because
just about their
it means
base.
the
Oh, shit, I accidentally unpaused my stream there. My
Oh,
video.
that's all right.
I'm at 14:01.
Let's
No,
see
it's not just
here.
about their base, dude. Take the recent decision with Jerusalem, for example, dude. There's a lot of people. Even Ben Shapiro is an example. He obviously was very supportive of that. And here's the thing, I'm not incredibly pro-Israel myself, but I do believe that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. It's always been considered the capital of Israel. Um, I I'm not anti or pro either side on that conflict. It's a religious conflict.
I'm a
I
two-solution person, and making Jerusalem the capital absolutely kills the two solution. I mean, it just flat out. It may not kill it, but it pretty much it stabs it pretty good.
and I'm looking through Google here. I cannot find a list of all the people that were involved in writing
Yeah,
this
I
bill.
actually saw it the other day.
It's sort of a side
Um,
point,
let me see.
but like the thing is like there are plenty of things that Trump has done that could be nonpartisanly agreed upon. There are things people within his administration that are guys like Jeff Sessions that I don't agree with, and I just I'm hoping that there is some reason, some scandal or something happens with Jeff Sessions to get him out of his position. I don't really care what it is. I don't even care if it's fake. I just want the guy out of there. Um, and but so like with Trump, I think so far the tax bill has gotten pretty a pretty decent amount of nonpartisan support, bipartisan support, I should say. I've heard plenty of Democrats that have sort of stated their satisfaction, their willingness to compromise with the bill. And here's the thing: is I'm very sympathetic to people's concerns over it, and I'm not gonna act like I know everything about it. I'm not an economist. I don't have all the information, all the answers for you. I'm never going to pretend like I do. But for the most part, I do think that he is doing things that are, in the long run, going to have a net benefit for a lot of people. And you know, as far as like the whole Israel and Palestine thing goes, with Jerusalem being the capital and whatnot, the whole I don't necessarily see why it eliminates the idea of having the two-state solution. Like first of all, it's the lines that are drawn right now are a bit confusing to begin
Look,
with.
man.
When we're talking about just like the literal location on the map for where exactly we're supposed to be drawing these lines between Israel and Palestine, if you look all around the map, like every single country that neighbors around Israel on every side is an Islamic country. Um, there's not a whole lot of other places that people within Israel can go without going to like Europe or moving into an Islamic country. And I think there are pretty clear and obvious reasons why that's not going to happen. I think there's a lot of people that really just want, like I could support some sort of two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. Like I said, it's a religious conflict. I can't really take a side in it because I don't really value either of their reasonings for the conflict. It's mostly based in things the ancestors did, and I don't think people should be held accountable for what the ancestors did in the past it's ever continuing. So the ancestors become, consistently more recent, so it's always going to continuously be an issue. But so it's not like they're fighting over things that happened 200 years ago. They're fighting over things that have been happening for hundreds of years consistently. And so it's
That's not even true. That's not even true though. That's the problem. It's not really. Yes,
what do you
it
mean?
has some religious roots, but the Palestinian Israeli conflict is not about religion. It's about land, and it's about okay. I'm not the Israeli people, Jewish people. Yeah, whatever. But the Israeli government has
Well, what's the claim
brutally.
over the land? It's a
You know
religious
what I'm
claim to the
saying?
land.
Well,
It's a religious
first of
claim to the
all,
land. That's why it
First of
matters.
all, I'm not saying that the Jewish people didn't deserve their own state or whatever, but we just kind of went over there and took people's land. But
I understand that it was
okay,
unethical the way
you
it was
understand
done.
that? You understand that we just took people's land, and
Yes,
we're not
yes,
talking
it
hundreds of
was an
years ago.
unethical procedure.
We're talking not even 100 years. We're talking not
Yeah.
even 2 generations ago. Okay, and how the Israelis have treated the Palestinian people. And I'm not saying that there's not guilt on both sides, right? You have your suicide bombings. I mean, you have that's the problem with whatever. It doesn't really matter who threw the first stone. Both sides are throwing stones. You know what I mean?
The history
It's
plays a part in it,
complicated.
but the
It's
religion is the issue
complicated.
at the end of the day.
History does play a part in it, but at the end of the day, there are plenty of Palestinians that have supported a two-state solution. But the Israelis keep annexing land. I mean, they keep,
Yes, they're
treating
very
the
totalitarian.
Palestinians brutally. Exactly. They're very totalitarian.
Hmm.
You can't just. I know they're our ally, but it's unethical. It's unethical the way we support Israel. We should support Israel in the sense that we should support any country that is, I mean, in danger or shares our values. But I mean, you
What
can't
did you think? What did you think about it when Obama suggested moving the capital to Jerusalem, the embassy, I
disagree.
should say?
I've always disagreed with it. I've always been.
A lot of people
I've
weren't really
always.
aware when he considered it.
I won't. Yeah, I know, but a lot of presidents have. I've never
Well,
agreed with
every
them.
president for the past
I've
20
always
years
been
at least
pro two-state
has.
solution. I've actually been.
I think
I
the
won't say pro.
conversation
I
starts
won't say
talking past each other.
pro-Palestinian.
I think
I
the
won't say
conversation
pro-Palestinian.
start talking past each other honestly because I don't think being pro like for the existence of Israel in Jerusalem as the capital has to like it often does with most people, but I don't think it necessarily has to conflict with a two-state solution of sorts. I think that we need to get very well established rock solid lines, UN sanctioned lines that cannot be crossed. Um, Israel does need to have a leash on it, obviously.
It does, and
But
that's what I'm saying again with the ideology versus what really happens. And this is another thing: ideology, not reality. Sometimes it leads to reality, but oftentimes it does not. The reality of the
but this
situation
is a
is
case where it
quite
does, though.
different than whether, like, oh, it'll be fine that they made Jerusalem the capital, because we can do this and that. That's not what's going to happen. I mean, you've seen what happened. The mass protests that broke out and violence. And yeah, you can go blaming aside saying Palestinians are violent and barbaric or whatever, which some did, and some will blame Israel. But if you
The
look at it
Israeli government
from
is
both
very
sides,
violent.
it's a natural reaction to an action. I mean, you know what I mean? You light a stick of dynamite, it's gonna blow up.
See
I mean, that's it.
that's where I have to start disagreeing a little bit because again, like both of the root cause of all this is that they both feel that they have a religious claim to this land. Like their only argument over ownership over it stems in their religious doctrines. They want religious group collective rights over land. And so yes, the issue they're fighting over, the actual thing they're you know attempting to obtain from each other is land, and with that, of course, resources at the end of the day. But it all stems back to why exactly do they feel they are entitled to it to begin with? And they both fundamentally have the same reasons. The Abrahamic religions, Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, that are the most fractured, divisive religions throughout the entire world and always have been. The majority of conflict that's occurred on this planet has been between sectors of that, like especially in the past 2,000 years. It's at the end of the day, like that, it's going to continue as long as radical religious traditionalism and things like Zionism still exist. Um, until that sort of stuff gets sort of taken out of the conversation, removed from the spectrum of what we're going to discuss, seriously. Like obviously, I'm not like the idea of Zionism. It's a religious sort of nationalism. I don't. It's so divorced from everything that anybody in America should ever believe in. The idea that here in America, obviously we have religious freedom, we have the separation of church and state and everything, and the idea of marrying religion and nationalism to me is just like the scariest thing in the world. Um, it's but so obviously people when people
I,
criticize Trump as a Zionist, I do have to agree with him. He is somewhat of a Zionist. It is something, making the embassy into Jerusalem, going to Jerusalem, that is quite obviously a goal for Zionists. It does serve their purposes. I do agree with that. There's no way you couldn't agree with that. But also you can't just look at the extremes that support that decision. There are moderate people that support it for just really different reasons. Guys like Ben Shapiro, obviously, yes, he's Jewish. You'd probably obviously consider Ben Shapiro to be much of a Zionist, but a lot of people who are followers of Ben Shapiro that are not Jewish, that don't have a religious motive for supporting it, might feel that it's good or it's justified because they have a sympathy towards it. And I think a lot of people, when you look at it geopolitically, when you look at the map around Israel, I think a lot of people feel that it's because in the Middle East, Jews are a great minority. They feel that their claim to the land is somehow more legitimate. I'm not saying it is one way or the other, but to sort of explain how the other side feels about that, like that's really the basis of it. Like it's not that anybody hates Palestinians or anything like that. It's not well, okay, there are obviously people who hate Palestinians. There are obviously people who hate Muslims. But like the reasonable position that you could talk about with this is like the idea is that there should be some sort of solution for Palestine. They should not be just totally you know thrown out of the country because, like I said, they were there before the Jews got back there, and it was an unethical seizure of land, and it's continuous, and
yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. A lot of this, okay, a lot of religious fundamentalism comes from, I do truly believe this, a lot of religious fundamentalism comes with an underexposure to, okay, ideas and education. And also when you have something like that, it is very easy to get behind the people, right, who say your enemy is the person who took your land. It's very easy to become a religious
yeah.
fundamentalist in this case, in those cases. You know what I'm saying? So yes, it does have religious root. I'm not saying that it doesn't. I mean, this is certainly a component. There's many components to it though, is what I'm saying. Like, and
Yeah.
one of them is the way that, I mean, Israel came to be, and this is less than 100 years ago.
Yeah, the
And
history does
then
play a
to
part.
rub salt in the wound, and I'm sounding like very pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, and I'm
Yeah,
not,
I
right?
understand what you're
I'm
saying.
all for all people, no matter what color, whatever. But the fact of the matter
It's a
is,
religious.
they, like you said, are very totalitarian in their application of their laws against Palestinians. Okay, like if I would fucking hate anyone like that myself. You know what I mean? And it's not gonna. And then obviously, your family, someone in your family is suicide bombed. You're gonna. I mean, it's a very vicious cycle. But at the end of the day, I think that I think that codifying, that's what it did. It really codified Israel's mark, as in saying Israel is going to be favored, right? A lot of people looking for a two-state solution see hope lost in that codification of Israel, Israel's claim to Jerusalem, basically.
Here's the thing. The United Nations still plays a role in this, and at the end of the day, it's not that Jerusalem will be recognized as the capital for every country throughout the entire world. It's just as far as America is concerned, Jerusalem will be considered the capital. The UN's already spoken out against it, and So obviously, America has a particular interest in protecting Israel, like I described, because of the fact that they are the minority of the people in the Middle East. They
I mean, not only
are
that, they have a national security interest. I mean, there's,
that,
you know,
and but they all like the sympathy comes from the fact that the majority of the people that they're interested in helping in the Middle East come down to Christians and Jews. And that there are a lot of Christians in the Middle East. A lot of people don't recognize that. And there's a lot of Jews as well. And as far as Jews go, the majority of them are in Israel. So um, it it's not necessarily based out of a hatred of the other side, but when one side and the majority of the people in the Middle East are very much supported by the Democratic Party as far as Palestine goes and everything like that. Uh, there has to be somebody sticking up for the rights of the other side as well, because while the government of Israel is incredibly totalitarian, and I can guarantee there's a lot of Jews within Israel that are probably maybe supportive of it. Um, I don't think you can hold the people there accountable for what their government's doing. Um,
no, no, absolutely not. I mean, and I would never propose that, and I would never propose that of any nation. I mean,
yeah,
even
I, I
North
I wouldn't
Korea. I
think
mean,
you
I don't think
would.
the North Korean people are so. I mean, if you talk to them, they would probably tell me that they hate me, and they might even shoot at me. But I know deep down it's because they've been so brainwashed. You know what I mean? That
Yeah, I don't have it in me
you know,
to hate either side, because, like I said, they're both misguided at the end of the day through religious indoctrination and
yeah. I
not,
don't hate
not
any
not only.
people. I hate leaders. There are leaders that I can say I hate. I mean, they're just evil people. I don't think it's wrong to hate
Mhm.
evil, but yeah, no people. I mean, there's no group of people that because of their leader. I mean,
Yeah, I was
you
having a
know,
conversation the other day. Oh, actually, just yesterday with this guy. We were talking about our motives for going into World War II, and this guy was suggesting to me that the reason we were neutral up until the time Japan attacked Pearl Harbor is because we had economic interest on both sides. We were funding both sides of the war, and then Japan sort of betrayed America, and that's the way he viewed it. And he said that we didn't go in there to stop the Holocaust. We did it as a reaction to the fact that we were attacked, and it was entirely self-interested. And here's the thing, like the I understand when people say that, like, the government, that may have been their motivations for doing that, but the soldiers fighting the fucking battles, man, when the shit they saw, the shit they had to go through, the shit they did to save people from the Holocaust, like that was a real thing that actually
yeah,
did happen.
no, yeah, no,
You
I
know,
agree. There's definitely a disconnect. I always say, this gets me in trouble, but I hate um, I hate the support your troops like yellow ribbon stickers. I hate them. I just hate them.
what?
I think they're so empty. Like it doesn't even mean anything, right? It's so empty of like let me put a sticker on my car, right?
Well, a lot of those
Um,
kind of bumper stickers are empty gestures, if that's what you're saying. I don't.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, I don't even know. Actually, it's kind of I don't even know why I brought that up. But anyway, like Iraq and Afghanistan, right? Like those soldiers aren't out there protecting our freedoms. Really, they're really not. At the end of the day, um, but I don't hold that against the
It might not
soldiers.
necessarily be
Those
our
soldiers'
freedom, but it
motive,
could be the
those
freedom of
soldiers'
others.
motives, those soldiers' motives are to protect our freedoms, right? So, I mean, they're
Well,
very
not just
noble. I'm not,
ours.
you know,
It's not
right,
all
or
about our freedom.
freedoms in general.
Yeah,
But Iraq wasn't really a threat to us. Afghanistan even
it wasn't a
wasn't
threat
even
to
a
us, but I'm
threat
not
to
only
us.
concerned about threats to
I mean,
us. I'm I'm not. I don't I don't understand that being the motivation. I don't necessarily care if it's only a threat to us. Like, if there's a threat towards any people in the world and we're able to help, I don't really see why, if you can't, why wouldn't you? I'm sorry, if
well,
you can, why wouldn't you?
you're not really. We weren't really able to help, but we did it anyway, and because we did it with the wrong intentions.
Well,
But
the government, obviously, yeah, they obviously had the wrong intentions. A they had a dictator that obviously needed to be taken out, but they took him out for their own gains, rather than the reasons he actually needed to be taken out. And the issue afterwards becomes the power vacuum. They
But
didn't.
no, but that's the problem. He didn't need to be taken out. He should have been left where he was, as
He
horrible
was
as a person
executing
that he
people
was.
daily.
He stabilized that region. Look at it now. How many people are getting executed now?
Yeah, that's understandable. It's like the method they have of trying to take these dictators
Well,
down and install some sort
there's no
of.
method though. There was no method. You get rid of a regime, you have a power vacuum.
Yeah, exactly,
There's
and
no.
that's been
It
that's
doesn't
been the
matter
issue.
what
That
method you
was the
have.
mistake George Bush's administration made, was that they didn't set anything up after. They knocked down walls
Well,
and didn't rebuild
there's
anything.
nothing to set up
And
after though. That's the point. That's the
what do you
point.
mean
That's
there's
why
nothing
people
to
who
set
didn't
up?
want to go into the Iraq War didn't want to go into the Iraq War. That's why
Well,
people. That's why some of some of the best minds in the world are saying we might just have to let Kim Jong Un have nuclear weapons because the alternative is, you know what I mean? Like we can't.
what's the alternative?
The alternative is mass casualties of South Koreans. I mean, it's a tough situation
You're
all
not
around.
confident that there's any way that you could go about taking out Kim Jong Un and the most important people higher up into his ranks,
No,
without mass casualties in South Korea.
no, dude. And not just this podcast, but you should listen to the podcast where Sam Harris talks to. He's like an expert on North Korea. But then if you talk, I've listened and read others. First of all, North Korea is an intelligence black hole.
Yeah, I know.
Second of
Fascist.
all, second of
Well, it's
all,
authoritarian.
I mean, second of all, yeah, but it's not just authoritarian. It is like it's
It's
actually
authoritarian communism.
it's actually amazing, really, like
Yeah.
how cut off from the world they really are. Like it's actually like very
Yeah,
for the
it
modern
doesn't
world.
show
It's
up
like
on the map at nights as far as lights
it's like
go.
it's like amazing. Anyway,
Yeah, like night space pictures.
yeah, like how it's almost like it's a tribe in like Papua New Guinea that's or like South American rainforest that's never had human contact. I mean, you know, what I mean, I
It's
know they've had human
authoritarian
contact, but it's
communism.
like it's crazy. But anyway, what I mean, the authoritarianism and the communism really have something to do with it, but that's not really the point. Though,
Well,
what I'm
I
saying is
mean,
they're
that's
very good at keeping themselves isolated, and they're
they're
so
somewhat of a
isolated.
monarchy as well. They have
It's
a form of a monarchy.
it's isolated in such a way unlike any other country in the world. And
Yeah.
second of all, the United States is obviously there's no question that we have the military capability to go bomb the shit out of North Korea, man. And even if
You don't think we
and
could
I don't
take the
even
missiles out pointing at Seoul?
no. Well, that's not what the experts think. They have their system set up, and that's why I mean, they're not dumb over there. Even if we were to wipe out the regime, the
They're
best
not
case
that dumb.
scenario would be not even nukes talking. Like their shit is like ready to fire, man. There would be mass civilian casualties in South Korea before we could effectively wipe everything out. So yes, we could wipe out North Korea, but not at the expense of mass South Korean casualties. And that is why North Korea is such a tough. I very much encourage you to read up on North Korea and some of the
I know
like
I know
military minds and stuff like that. There's no easy solution to this. And letting him have nuclear weapons is not an easy solution either because that's a gamble on whether he really is a madman
It
or
should have been
whether
handled
he
15, 20 years ago. Like, we should have taken out the regime before they were ever developing nuclear weapons.
that's the problem though. It's been like this for a long time. That's why no Democrat or Republican. I mean, this has been going on since what, Clinton or earlier? I mean, Bush, Clinton, first Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama. The North Korea is certainly it's very tricky. It's a very tricky situation
I'm
because
not a
if
fan of how
anybody,
Trump handles it on Twitter. I'll tell you that. Um, I obviously think that's pretty fucking ridiculous. But let's go ahead and get back to the podcast here. So,
all right, yeah,
we stopped on talking about the comparisons between Ben Shapiro and Milo
yeah,
Yiannopoulos and Nazis and all that shit. So, but like we got into talking about North Korea and shit now, and Palestine and all that shit.
All right.
So it's good.
It's easy
I'm
to
at
do. I don't know if we're
1401.
going to get through this podcast, but it's okay. All right, let's go.
We'll let longer parts go. We'll only get the important parts here. So I'm
All
at
right.
1401. All right, I'm at 1401. I'm gonna start it up.
Let me see. I'm at 14. I'm at like 1408. Tell me when you get to 1409.
Okay.
That's
I'm
an
not
unfortunate pairing because it means the reason why I wanted to talk to you is because while I think you and I
All right, I'm at 1409.
All right, go.
All right, 3, 2,
2,
1.
1.
will disagree about several maybe foundational things, I see you as someone who is sincerely defending a position based on kind of a rational chain of argumentation, based on first principles that we may or may not share. But you're not a performance artist, and that's a crucial distinction. And
I mean, that's at least what I'm going for, right? I mean, I've always thought that what I'm trying to do anyway is say things that I think are true, and if they piss you off, they piss you off. But I'm not going in there with the idea I need to piss somebody off to make a headline. That's why I've always found this a little bit puzzling, because there are provocateurs whose job it is to go into a university, say something deliberately provocative just to get a rise out of people and get a headline. And since that really is not my MO, I've been sort of puzzled, frankly, by the level of opposition on all sides. It was a very weird year. I mean, last year was a weird year. I had the alt-right calling me a Black Lives Matter activist, and Black Lives Matter calling me an alt-righter. So it was a unique time. 2016, we're still living in a parallel universe in which Marty McFly actually did not stop Biff from using the sports yearbook.
one lens through which I want us to view this conversation is really two lenses. It's what most worries you and what most interests you at this point. Let's start with the worry. Where are you at this moment?
Well, I guess for me, I've tried to localize my concern with the breakdown of what I call semi-reliable communal sense-making. If something happens...
it's a very Eric Weinstein phrase.
It's the reason my Twitter follower count is orders of magnitude below yours. The idea being that if something happens and everybody in the audience processes it, we will fall into certain clusters, and those clusters are fairly reliable and dependent. And so, to Ben's point that he is both Black Lives Matter and alt-right in this Schrodinger superposition. So what is that? And it has to do with the fact that traditionally we've used institutions to guide our sense making and to make sense of things collectively, and that has now gone away. And so depending upon what institutions I'm hooked up to, what was my last, where did the fox, last have the scent, I can be at odds with somebody I love, somebody who I've thought about as somebody I've shared a life with, because there's no longer any way to do this communal. And the semi-reliable, I don't think that Walter Cronkite was actually always telling us the truth, but it was in some sense, to first approximation, close enough that there was a national consciousness, belief structure. There was enough shared sort of complex for us to function as a country. And I think that that's gone away. So I think this is the parent of the crisis, which I increasingly think of as this, I call it the no-name revolution or the N-squared revolution. We're in some sort of new regime, which doesn't look like any revolution we've seen before. It's much less physically violent so far. It's digitally extremely violent, and it has to do with the fact that we can't make sense of things communally at some semi-reliable level.
And what are the ideas or sets of ideas that you think are most culpable for bringing us here?
Well, it's tough. I think that what really happened, if we think about it historically, is that we had this beautiful period of fairly reliable, high, evenly distributed, technologically led growth after World War II, up until about, let's say, 1970. And we predicated all of our institutions on this expectation that this growth was some sort of normal thing that we could depend upon in the future. When it ran out, we were left with all of our institutions looking in some form or another like Ponzi schemes. And in order to keep running an institution that expected growth in a steady state condition, let's say, you need to change the narrative to create some sort of as-if growth story. So you start stealing from the future, you start stealing from groups that are too weak to defend their own economic interests so that certain slices can keep growing, even if the pie doesn't grow so well. There are certain areas that kept growing, like communications and computation. So there was some real growth, maybe fracking. But that in general, what we have is we have a bunch of institutions that used to be capable of honesty that had to develop narratives, and that the problem is we've had as-if growth across the spectrum for most of our adult lives, and that story, which is a fiction, ran out.
You're not one of these anti-capitalists I've been hearing about, are you? You're the managing director of Teal Capital, so that wouldn't be good.
If this gets out, I'm toast.
So is that the, well...
That's the genesis of it.
I mean, so you actually think economics is the longest lever here that's influencing the machine? I mean, like this breakdown of this failure of polite conversation to get us to converge on a meaningful worldview.
Hey, are you still there?
If you chase it all the way up the chain, I mean, markets
Okay,
are
let's
in some
pause
sense
it
the
at
continuation of,
1928.
natural
I don't know
selection.
why, but I don't know with my internet. It just like kind of paused itself anyway.
Okay.
Um,
In 1930.
so he kind of interjects. Now, I think it paused before he got a chance to answer, but I think he was saying that economics has been a kind of one of the main
lever.
causes of this. Yeah, the breakdown of this or whatever of our culture and being able to establish a basically collective truth.
Yeah, the primary divide, essentially.
Right. So I actually think that that's what. How do I want to? I kind of agree, but I disagree. I guess maybe I disagree on. Or maybe I would find out if we're able to listen. I would agree, but I guess that I agree in which I think that is what enables it. It enables people to be so comfortable with giving up a collective truth because they essentially now it's basically it's become more tribalistic because the economic pie pieces have gotten so small. So now it's just kind of like this every man or every group for themselves kind of thing, right? So it's like as long as like who gives a shit what's good for all Americans? Like as long as like whatever the I don't know. As long as I'm in the insurance industry. So if it was me, maybe as long as the insurance industry is like going to be cool, like I don't give a fuck what policies they put in. You know what I mean? Or as long as blah 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 manufacturing, or as long as the tech industry. So that's like that's the economic kind of thing driving the cultural divide, right? So then you get the social issues wedged in there as well. But one of the problems I think is why it's not all economic. I actually really think that the when the Republican Party or the conservatives kind of let the religious element in, like, and not just the religious element in general, not just damning all religion, but the real hard right line kind of fascist religion, you know what I mean, or Christians in the country, when they really started marrying that into the party, I think that that's really
What
what you
what
started
exactly is your definition of fascist?
of fascism.
Mhm.
I would say, like, I mean, control, thought control. You know what I mean? Cultural
I'm
control.
very willing to describe like fundamentalist Christians, especially the ones involved in politics, the Bill O'Reilly supporters of the world. I'm definitely willing to call those people very puritanical, very totalitarian. Fascist necessarily. Here's the thing: when you're campaigning against violent video games because you think they're going to turn people into criminals, that's one thing. I could definitely call you like you're a Puritan of sorts. You're a totalitarian in nature.
It's
But
authoritarian. It's authoritarian, really. I mean,
well, I
yeah,
mean, I mean, not entirely separate. You know, like the obsession over controlling culture, controlling what people do in their personal lives, like
right.
that sort of thing. Like I don't know, like to go as far as to call it fascist, to put it in the same thing as what we think of as Hitler and Mussolini. I'm just not comfortable as labeling it as the same thing. Like there could be similarities,
Why
but
aren't you
because
comfortable? It doesn't have to have committed the atrocities. You won't say, okay, fascism is really kind of like the definition of fascism is like authoritarianism and married with like a nationalistic element. And you can't tell me that there's not a nationalistic element in like evangelical, like right wing
no, of course it
American
is, of course there
Christianity.
is.
I mean, come on,
I mean,
man. It's authoritarianism.
all religious fundamentalists believe they have claim to some sort of land, typically the land they were born on. You know, like that's very
Their
obvious.
belief system is fascist in nature. It really is. I don't see why I'm so out of line or why you're so
I'm not
uncomfortable.
saying
Like,
it's out of line. I'm just not personally comfortable putting them in the same in the. You know, it's just like it's a big leap there to go from talking about
there's,
guys like
but
George
you're the
Bush
one.
to
No,
Mussolini.
listen.
You
You're the
can't.
one making the leap, though.
It's
I did
not.
not
No.
compare them to Mussolini
If you're calling him a fascist, that
or
is a comparison. Like that is
why? Why is it a
well
comparison?
because if you call somebody a
I disagree.
Marxist,
I
if you call
disagree
somebody
with
a
that
Marxist,
premise.
if you call somebody a Marxist, are you not comparing them to Marx?
I didn't call them Stalinists, and I did not call them Mussolinists. I called them
Yeah, but we all
fascists.
know who the fascists that we're all talking about are. We're talking about
So
Hitler
do you
and
think like?
talking about Italy at the
But I
time.
was saying,
Mm.
not all fascists are like going to go out and commit atrocities, just like not all communists are. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. You call someone a communist, I mean, do you automatically have to see? That's another. Actually, that's a good point to touch on.
Does
That right
being a
there, I
communist
think.
necessarily mean you're a bad authoritarian, potentially
No, I don't.
genocidal
It
person?
doesn't.
No, I
And
don't
being a
believe that.
fascist doesn't mean doesn't being a fascist doesn't mean that you're going to go out and beat up a bunch of non-fascists or whatever. But it does mean that your ideological that your beliefs are fascist or communist in nature or this in nature or libertarian or utilitarian or Kantian. Christian right is fascist. I'm sorry. And they implement fascist policies that are meant to control people and to give their certain group of people more power, which is extremely nationalistic.
Like, what exactly would you classify as fascist so far that they've actually implemented? Let's talk about in modern times as well. It's not good. Like, I don't talk about things that happened, 70, 100 years ago. Like that's one thing. But
No,
like in
dude,
modern times.
stalwarting gay rights is one prime and that's what I was
Okay,
getting
yeah,
at.
that's a
Hold on.
damn good example. That's a damn good example. You're absolutely right
And,
about that.
but listen though, and that's how we got on this topic is because that's where I was going with. I think that conservatives, as much as they bitch, they blame liberals for it. I think they're ultimately responsible for the culture war. Because if they would have just let things be, nobody's forcing them to get gay married, or no one's forcing them to. And me, as an atheist, more liberal person, I would be the first to say that you should not force a church to marry a gay couple because a church is like a private religious thing. Now, if you're a baker, see, there's where we might disagree. We can get into that in a second because I think that if you're a public business, you should serve all the public unless there's being belligerent or what I mean, breaking rules or whatever. But anyway, um,
Can I interject for a second? Here's the thing. Like the sort of person that I am very very much socially liberal, and I would say economically somewhere in between conservative and libertarian. Whatever you view libertarian to mean, libertarian can mean a lot of different things. Like it can mean more different things than anything else you can
well,
call
it can
yourself.
be right. Yeah.
Yeah, libertarian is a very general term, but whenever I take a political compass test, I end up somewhere on the center right, like within 3 points of the center, and I'm not incredibly far right as far as economics go, but the majority of what brings me closer to the center, closer to the left at all, is my views on social issues and social liberalism. And I typically am classified as a neoliberal when I take any sort of values test or anything like that. Um, and a lot of people have an issue with the term neoliberalism, and I think a lot of people, especially if you talk to a lot of libertarians, neoliberals are the devil. Like, is
Right.
essentially they are the bane of everything in politics. And I think the the people that have been classified as neoliberals, as far as actual politicians go, I don't think are actually true neoliberals, and I don't think a lot of people really know what the term means. The prefix neo just means new. It's new liberalism, and neoliberalism in of itself is nothing more than a modified version of liberalism that supports capitalism. And it is not that like a lot of people who call themselves classical liberals and whatnot, they actually get it kind of wrong because the sort of liberals that lead more towards socialist policies, that's the actual classical liberalism. That's where liberalism originated.
I understand.
There
I
was
understand.
initially,
I
yeah.
don't want to get, hold on. I don't want to get caught up on terms. I want to go
Yeah.
back to this. I want to go back to the task at hand, right? So I was saying that the Christian right is largely responsible for the culture war because if they would have just been let things be, if they would have just been on the side of liberty, everything would have been fine. So you get these ideas. This is what starts muddying
What do you
the
mean by
waters
that
with truth.
exactly? I just don't really get what you mean. Like do you mean like they're somehow responsible for the hysteria? I think you're sort of acknowledging that there's some sort of hysteria on the left to these days. Like, are you trying to say that somehow because of the way that
Yeah,
the religious right has
there
been
is
in
a
culture?
there is a lot of pushback from the left, and sometimes the left goes too far. I do
So you're
not
saying
disagree with that.
the left you're saying that the left wing hysteria is sort of reactionary.
Most certainly on socially,
I can agree with that.
because
I can agree
I
with that to
mean,
a pretty great extent because I think if you even just look at right wing media about 15 20 years ago, it is dramatically different than when you look at it today. I think a great deal of libertarians have sort of infiltrated their way into a lot of conservative media, and that there's a different blend going on these days. But the Bill O'Reilly types of the world, you know, the Fox News Republicans of the Rust Belt 20 years ago, those sort of people, I can absolutely agree that yeah, like the religious right at that time was being socially totalitarian, and
no, but I'm
I
saying, thank God they're being beat, and you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
They're
but now
being
it's
beat,
the
like as
pendulum
far
swings
as
just as far the other way though, and it's just like one like both sides can be equally as oppressive towards the other.
okay, yeah,
Like
sure,
we
but
were
that's
talking
what
about.
I want to go back though, is because this is where everything gets muddied. Yes, both sides can be certainly be oppressive, but is there a false equivalency? Because what my aunt
No,
would call
absolutely not.
oppressive, which my aunt would call oppressive, okay, someone like my aunt who is a right wing Christian, and I would say that her ideas are very fascist in nature. And look, she's a great
There's
person.
no
She's
false
a loving,
equivalency.
you know what I mean?
By body count
Hold
alone,
on
there's
a
no
second.
false
My
equivalency.
aunt will say things like, if you, oh, being, okay, if, let's see here, allowing gay marriage in America violates my rights as a Christian. Okay? That is simply untrue. Anybody who has had like anything in their head about liberty, like liberty is like you don't no one
Say that one
affects her
more
by being
time,
gay,
exactly.
right? Like her idea of someone trampling her rights is just by allowing something in a society.
You're talking
And we're
about
not talking like
the one woman that was refusing to, what was her name again? The woman that was refusing to
no,
marry to.
I'm talking about my aunt.
Oh,
But yeah,
okay, got it.
she's a good example as well
I
though.
think Kim Davis is the name or something like that.
Yes, she's a good example as well. But what I'm saying is regular people like my aunt, who I would say are fascists. I mean, their ideas are fascist. Not to say she's a bad person. She's a very sweet woman. But
You
she
think
would
she
say,
just has some unwitting fascist beliefs?
No, she would say something to the effect of, I actually heard it say, allowing gay marriage. Because I'm like, why are you against gay marriage like being legal? And she says allowing gay marriage goes against, basically violates my rights as an American Christian. Okay,
Right, but
which
what I
is
mean by unwitting
absolutely.
fascist, like they very well could believe some fascist
Why are you
things,
so
but
hung up on words, dude? We're not talking
I'm
about
not.
words.
Well,
I'm trying
I'm
to get
just
you. So, do
saying.
you think that's ridiculous? Do you think that that statement's ridiculous?
I think people have their personal beliefs, and what they vote for is obviously affected by that. But like for the yeah, they can obviously have some fascist
Not talking about
beliefs.
strategy. We're talking about ethics. Do you think that that is? Oh shit! Hold on. My video just started again. Uh,
Okay.
do you think that that is? Do you think that violates someone's right by just allowing something in a society? And let's not even talk about abortion, because
No,
that,
no, no.
that can.
Here's
Let's
the
talk
thing.
about something like gay marriage, right?
Yeah. Like, there's absolutely nothing about gay marriage that violates anybody's rights. The conversation these days has become services so far as religious companies and the ceremonies revolving around gay marriages. We'll take the cake issue for example. I personally believe that I don't believe a company should be free to discriminate. If you serve the public, you serve the public.
I agree.
Here's the thing. If a company decides to discriminate, should we like the issue I have is like now we're gonna shut that place down because they have some religious reason they don't want to do
Well,
business with a
they
particular
weren't shut
person.
down. They were fined. They were fined,
But
which
people
did
wanted them
shut
to
them
shut
down.
down. People
Which
wanted
did
them to
shut
shut
them
down.
down.
Yeah,
Okay.
like yeah, okay.
Well, okay.
The fine is
Well,
obviously a
hold
punishment
on then.
for.
Hold on. Are those people wrong for wanting them to shut down? That's the free market. Now,
I
the
think it's
government
very
should not
easy.
have the
You can go
ability
and find
to.
another bakery, and that business can either fail on its own or succeed on its own. If people don't want to support that company, people, dude, like first of all, good luck. Good luck. I think even Ben Shapiro said this. Like, you can
Hold
definitely
on
find
though.
a gay bakery. You know,
What
like
what
they're
Why does it have to be by those specific rules to be free market? Why, if someone says, we the people
because it's not a
in
free
this
market if you
fucking
have the
town,
government punish them.
we the people in this town do not want a business. I do not want a business in Massillon, Ohio, say for example, that discriminates against people. That's the free market. It's just a different way. It's just a way that maybe conservatives don't agree with,
I
but
agree with
it's
you. At
the
the end of the day, it's
same.
about the
It's the
solution,
same
though.
concept. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I agree on the premise. It's about the solution. That's the
Now,
issue,
now,
though.
hold on though. Hold on. I don't believe that the government should go in like the health
And
department
find them.
finds, unhealthy conditions, shuts down a restaurant. I don't think that they should be able to go shut down a restaurant because they discriminate.
Right.
However, I do believe that the government should be able to fine them for not following the law
But the
that
fine
we
is
have in this
obviously in
country.
order to shut them down. You're bankrupting them. That's the point of the fine. Like
You should
we
not
can't
have
pretend that's not the
committed.
intention. That isn't
Okay, you
100%
should
the
not have
intention.
committed the violation though. They knew the
Okay,
rules,
well, I
right?
mean, that
You
is
would say
not.
that. I mean,
No, I would not say that. Like that can apply to so many
why?
different things. That can apply to
It
so
could.
many different things. So many different things that you would not agree with that and apply to
Okay.
other
All right.
things.
Hold on then. Hold on then. Do you agree or disagree that we should have laws against discrimination?
Absolutely, you have laws against
Okay.
discrimination. As far
So
as
there
things
was a
like
law.
employment and
Hold on.
everything goes, there should be laws against discrimination. It like, obviously, here's the as far as discriminating
Okay.
against
Hold on. Hold on a
customers.
second. Hold
Okay.
on a second. Then do you believe, because that's what the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is not just about employers. That is about discriminating against customers. So do you believe or not believe that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is correct?
Absolutely, of course.
Okay, then why wouldn't you include homosexuals in that?
Who said I'm not? Look, here's the
Okay,
thing.
so why is it wrong to
I would
fine
find
a
the company.
business?
I would find the company if they denied a person employment or on the basis of any sort of discriminatory practice they have. As far as denying somebody a service, that's a different thing. We have the freedom of association in this country, and if a Christian or an Islamic bakery or any sort of religious bakery or whatever other service that is involved around the ceremonies of marriages and whatnot, if they are not comfortable practicing something that they fundamentally religiously do not believe in, they have the religious freedom to discriminate in that case. And I'm not saying it's justified. I don't agree with their beliefs fundamentally, but they have the right to refuse somebody a service really for any reason. They're not obligated to serve anybody. They're obligated to have everybody have an equal opportunity of employment. You can't discriminate based on for employment for anything like that. They can't turn away somebody who wants to be, a baker and they're gay at their bakery. They can't do that. But for you to fine them after they denied somebody a service, you're stepping in where the market, first of all, in this country, as far as any liberal, like majority liberal country, like this is a very America. As far as the population goes, I think you can definitely say that the majority of people that are at least politically active are very socially liberal, and there absolutely would have been a public market response to those people. People would not even not just gay people not supporting them, a huge section of their entire community around the place would not have supported them. They would have gone out of business just naturally. But instead we have the government do it instead, and it's just sort of it puts a stain on it because first of all it's like
Why?
it,
It
it
only,
feels
but that's what
wrong.
I'm saying.
It
It's
feels
only,
oppressive in
it's
this
only,
case.
it only puts a stain on people that muddy the water of what liberty actually is.
Well, do you believe in the
Okay?
freedom of association though? Because that's what the
No,
issue is.
but I'm saying, or not necessarily liberty, but the law. I mean, the law. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlaws discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Okay? It outlaws the discrimination for employment, voting, there's one other, and public accommodations.
Can I ask you something?
So if
Let's reverse it a little bit.
if they broke the law, why in the world shouldn't they be fined? What is the point of having a law if there's no? You have to have sanctions if you have a law.
Can we turn the table for a second here because
Yeah.
like
Go
'cause
ahead and give me a scenario. Sure.
let me give you an opposing scenario like where this could negatively affect people on the other side.
That a gay couple stops
Say for
a
example,
Christian.
say for example that somebody within the alt right or whatnot went into a gay bakery and wanted some sort of alt right themed wedding, all those sort of things, and they denied that person service based on the fact that he's alt right. I don't want to serve him. I don't want to associate with this person. A gay person is perfectly reasonable to think that like, hey, no, I don't want to participate in some alt right wedding. My business should not be obligated to do so. This is the way I look at it. And so, okay, so these people have opposing beliefs. They shouldn't be forced to associate with each other. They shouldn't be forced to do business with each other. They should be able to disassociate from themselves freely, and they
Okay,
can
hold
go
on.
associate with others.
No, I still agree that unless the alt right people wanted them to put like faggot or lefty bitch or snowflake, I'm a
If they want to,
snowflake on the
if they
cake.
want to, I don't care what they want on it. Like regardless, like if you're
Say
they're
it's
gonna
just a
have.
regular say it's just a regular cake. No, there's no derogatory terms, right? That just we're having an all maybe I don't know because I don't even know what did the cake have on it in the Christian. See, if you're going to make a comparison, it needs to be an exact comparison. What did they want the cake? Did they want rainbows on the cake? Did they
I don't
want
think
the
it's
Christian
necessarily
bakers to make
important what exactly what the
rainbows?
decorations were. Like people have made. I understand that people have made the argument that because of what the cakes were meant to look like, a lot of times it like it's not just gay parties or gay ceremonies or anything like that. It's liberal parties, hippie parties, and shit like that. They have boobs, they have dicks, they have all these sort of like sexual themed things that you eat and shit like
Was
that.
it though? Was that the cake in the case?
I don't know the details in that case. And personally,
Okay, all right.
I don't
So
think it takes away from the argument either way. I don't think it
no, it
matters
does.
because it's
It
the
does matter. It
association that
matters a lot.
matters.
No, it matters a lot.
I'm not
But
going to compare a
let's
dildo
just
sucker
say,
to a
hold on.
swastika on a cake.
Let's just say that it's the cake is neutral. It's just a chocolate cake with like regular wedding decorations. Nothing alt right, nothing gay, nothing, right? Just neutral cake.
When the
Then
chocolate
yes,
was all right.
the gay bakers should absolutely serve the alt right. I mean it's a law.
Oh, I absolutely
You
disagree. I absolutely disagree. That is not that is totally against the freedom of association. I don't. Why? Like, first of all, you could put the gay people in danger. You're gonna put them in a room with a shit ton of alt righters that don't even believe in half of them don't even believe in their fucking existence in this country. And it's like what the like absolutely not. You can't force
okay? Hold on a
someone.
second. No, hold on a second though.
Mhm.
That totally changes it, though. See, this is what I'm saying. It's not a fair comparison. If in order to serve the alt-right, the gays had to put themselves in danger, that is not reasonable accommodation. Therefore, not violating a law. Therefore, not discriminating.
Okay,
They did it because
regardless of
they're
physical
going to be in
danger,
danger.
do you actually think a gay person should have to go through a ceremony and their business be associated with a ceremony that, first of all, could feature all sorts of things that they don't believe in, whether it's swastikas or Klan hoods, or
Okay.
all these sort of things that obviously gay people would
So
not support?
okay. So
Yeah.
an Arab should basically say, "I'm not fucking cooking a cake for a Jew," and a Jew can say, "I'm not baking a cake for an Arab," and now a white bakery can say, "I'm not cooking a cake for a black wedding." What's the difference between?
Race is where it changes a little bit for me, because I don't necessarily respect, I don't respect racial divisions in the same sense that, like, I understand more people's ideological divisions, and I think if you have a bakery refusing to serve a black wedding, or just a wedding of any other different race than theirs, regardless of what it is, I think that's a bit of a different thing, because, like, that's you're at this point you're discriminating in the, in the case of a service being provided on the basis of an uncontrollable characteristic of that person, and
I'm sorry. Now we have to do the whole. You don't think that being gay is an uncontrollable characteristic
well,
or
okay,
great
okay,
characteristic?
yeah, well, you're right about that. That is true. But here's the thing.
I would say that,
The
okay, I would
the
definitely say
scenario
that
you're
there are
saying,
people out there that probably are maybe bi and maybe can make the argument that they choose to be gay, but for the most part, it is a biological kind of, I mean, you want to fuck who you want to fuck. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
well, the mainstream left wing narrative these days is that for both sexuality and gender is entirely fluid, and you can change rapidly between days. For all we know, like, that's
Well,
it's not
does it matter though? That's what I'm
the whole
saying. Does it
born this
matter
way
though?
argument has actually sort of been abandoned by the left, as far as I've seen. Like, that's not. I think if you ask a lot of people who consider themselves
No,
progressives and
I think
feminists
you
and whatnot
take it,
these days,
I think
they
you
don't
take it
agree
the
with that.
wrong way, dude. Sexuality is, but there are definitely levels. There are definitely like people who are legitimately like on the scale to the, like if straight was like right, and if there's a line and straight was on the right and gay was on the left, dude. I mean, there's a spectrum.
Okay, well, back to the principle of it, though. So, I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. Like, it is a valid comparison, and I'm not going to say it's not. But the thing is, I don't know. Like, honestly, if you put the scenario in front of me, if, say, if a white bakery wants to discriminate against a black customer, to be honest, I have two different feelings about that as far as services goes. I don't believe you should be able to discriminate in case of employment in any case whatsoever. But as far as the service goes, honestly, like, what do you think the punishment should be if they attempt to do so?
If they discriminate,
If they just in that scenario, like if it was a white bakery
I
discriminating
mean,
against a black person for
obviously they have precedent for it because they fine the bakery, and however much they fine them for whatever law broke. So I mean, there's definitely sanctions already in place. What do you think that I personally think the punishment should be? I think it should be a fine. I mean, yeah, you serving the public and make
do you believe
money
it should be a
contribute.
fine that's big enough to put them out of business?
Um, I don't know. I don't know how they classify it. I would. I don't.
Like, would you rather disincentivize them or just totally bankrupt them? I feel like I
I
can
would. I
definitely
would.
agree with you here. Like, in the
I
case
would
of both
rather. I
racial
would
and
actually
gender.
rather. I think it would. I think it would. I would rather. I don't know how they do it now, but if I had my choice, it would be a tier, right? So if you're a business that makes so much a year, blah blah blah, you get fined a percentage, basically, I guess, and not enough to necessarily bankrupt you. But so yeah, maybe the way the United States does it is wrong. I think that everything should be not necessarily case by case, but things should be accounted for. Like if you're a business that makes 100,000 a year, you shouldn't be fined necessarily the same as a
My thing
corporation
is
that
like
makes 10
I
billion.
wouldn't want a gay bakery to go out of business if they denied service to a Christian. To take the alt-right aspect out of it, because that's sort of a false equivalency. Because the
Honestly,
alt-right,
I'm not a bitter person. I don't necessarily want to see any go out of business, but if you discriminate against somebody in our country, you should be. I mean, there's got to be consequences for it. You can't just let the free market
there should
decide.
be a consequence. I just don't think it needs to be
Like,
entirely
actually,
life-ruining for them.
what's like kind of really funny to me is that I hear a lot of arguments on the right about how we're not a democracy, we're a republic, and this and that, and the reason is
True.
because of mob rule. But isn't the free market, isn't that really just mob rule when you think about it?
Yeah, but that's economic freedom. That's economic libertarianism, and that is the thing is that's the ultimate contradiction because on one side, on the left, you have people who are not for economic freedom. Like fundamentally, everything as far as the left proposes, economic freedom is not something that they typically care about. But social freedom is where the left really shines. But people like social liberals are, generally the defenders of social freedoms. But on the right, the contradiction is that they are, at least traditionally, not for a whole lot of social freedoms, and therefore a lot of economic freedoms. And so like that's the big divide that they have there. And so, the thing is, as far as how the right would respond to something like this, like there are obviously people who are just they believe in the freedom to discriminate out of like, and
I
just
know, I've seen the
let
arguments
the
before, and then let the free market decide.
handle it. Like when you phrase it like that, it just sounds so empty. Like I hate when people
But
talk
it,
about the
but that
market as an
because no,
entity
why do you hate it though? That's
because the
because I
market's not an
hear
entity. The market's not
these
separate from
arguments
the people.
these arguments have been played out before and they didn't work. We let the market decide. And you know what? Blacks didn't get served. And there was a whole portion of this country that fucking literally got fucking hung and beaten and fucking not served by the public and treated like dogs.
Okay, that was okay. Like obviously, it was a much different country at the time, and
Okay.
like, but
What's going to
also
stop that
like
from happening in communities and shit? So people in
I
communities
don't
should
think a
suffer
Christian person
because
denying a gay person service to a wedding or any sort of other ceremony, anything like that, is going to lead to people getting assaulted in the streets. If that's the sort of comparison you're making, it's not.
I'm
It's
not
not.
saying that people are going to be hung and assaulted in the streets anymore like that. I mean, that is what happened, but that's not necessarily what would happen now. But you know what? I guarantee that segments of the population would be treated like dogs and like second-hand citizens in the second
People are
water
going to be
fountain.
treated however people treat them, regardless of what the law is. Like you're going to see.
That's not true, though.
Dude, I just seen a video this morning of some dude going up and attacking. I think he mistook them for a Mexican family. He was assaulting them with a baseball bat, and
Okay.
like
Yes.
people
There's
people
terrible shit that happens
terrible shit
still, and
still
it's always going to
happens.
happen.
Yeah, like
But
like the law
I'm
is
not saying
obviously against that.
I'm not saying people in the streets, man, but you can't tell me that there are like vast pockets of the country in which like basically blacks probably wouldn't be served again. I mean, you know what I mean? There are pockets in this country. And to flip it too, I mean, Arabs would probably get the brunt end of it, honestly, in my opinion,
I
nowadays.
think the majority of the Arab population in America lives in bigger cities, which are pretty
Well,
predominantly liberal.
yeah, I think you're right, but what I'm saying is they do like to, well, that's the thing though. Yes, they do. But you know what? They have every right as me, if they're not breaking the law, to travel and see Mississippi and
Oh, yeah,
Alabama
yeah,
and
you're right. I'm not saying they
okay,
don't.
you know, without being discriminated against. And you know
Yeah,
damn well that,
I'm not, I'm just saying I'm like as far as them getting the brunt of it and everything. I think it might be a bit different. But at the end of the day,
well,
what we are talking about is the limits to the freedom of association because putting it in a racial context for me really makes it a lot different than talking about something like gender or sexuality, something like that. I understand that yes, there are many people who are born gay; they can't control that. It is inherent in them. Um, so it's not entirely different than being born as a certain race. Um, but At the end of
But
the
it
day,
is. But
but at
I
the end
don't
of the day,
understand why
at
the
the end of the day,
separation.
because one is an ethnicity, one is an entirely different lifestyle, an entirely different sort of ceremony that's going to take place and
Okay.
everything, and it's
Okay.
like I don't. When I look at it from both sides, when I look how both sides could be affected on it, like if I wouldn't want a gay bakery to be shut down for not wanting to serve a Christian's ceremony, which I'm not saying that would even happen. I'm not saying it's already. I'm not saying it's occurred. Like there's any example I can point to, but hypothetically, if that were to
I
occur,
know what you're saying.
wouldn't want a
Yeah,
gay bakery to be shut down or fined so heavily that they go
I
bankrupt.
understand.
And so
Right.
on the other side. I can't 100% say I want the Christian bakery to go bankrupt when they don't want to serve a gay wedding or something like that. Like it's not I, it's not I'm not trying to make it like it has to be 100% equal or anything like that because obviously the cases that we see won't be 100% equal. Um, I
Okay.
don't think there's a great deal of gay bakeries
But
that would discriminate
okay.
against
Okay.
Christians.
Hold on now. That's the muddying of truth, though, as well. The government didn't, not that I know of, purposely make that business go out of business. They had a fine that they decided to implement because that broke the law.
It
So
was quite
again, so
obviously
so it's
excessive. It
not
was an
it's not the
excessive fine.
it's not the law that has anything wrong with it. It's the
Any fine that
application.
puts a small business out of business is incredibly excessive. There's no
Yes,
reasonable way about it.
right. So the sanction for the law is the problem. But that's where the muddying comes from because now we're arguing about the law itself when it really should be the sanction of the law. So should it be illegal to discriminate? Yes.
I
Should
think
it
there's
necessarily
two
put a
different
business
rights that are being
out of
discussed here.
business?
There's two different rights that are being discussed here. Like, we're discussing both. First of all, the right to be served and also the right to refuse service. They sort of conflict with each other, and I understand where both sides are coming from, and I'm pretty obligated to agree with points on both sides. Like there is a conflict
Okay.
there. There's a
You
big
should have
conflict
to,
there.
I mean, you should have to have a reasonable,
Well, I
I mean, reason. You should
here's
have
the
to have
thing.
a reasonable reason to
If you're
deny
just
someone
selling
service,
somebody a
like
cake,
being too drunk, right? Like being too drunk, or being belligerent if they're actually causing your other customers harm, discomfort, or I mean, obviously, you don't.
here's what I'll
It
say.
should be
Here's what I'll
legal
say.
to.
I think there's a difference between providing somebody a product and providing them a service. If you're selling them materials, if you're simply baking them a cake and giving it to them to go use at the ceremony, whatever, I think you should be obligated to perform that service. You should be obligated to provide that product for them. I think the main issue that people are really afraid of is the obligation of them to attend the ceremonies themselves. And I think that's where my number one point of contention is that I don't think that anybody should be obligated to attend any ceremony that they don't believe in for whatever reason, whether or not the belief is necessarily a nice, fair thing to believe in. Like,
So, what, I mean, where would that even come into play, though?
I think the difference between providing somebody a product and providing somebody a service, and actually forcing somebody to attend something, a
Like
ceremony,
maybe if you're talking about a catering
like
company, but at the
like
same
on the
time,
other, like well yeah well I mean it was a catering company that was part of the issue is that they were to attend the wedding, they were to participate in the ceremony. It was more than just baking a cake. It was also the fact that they wanted them to participate in the ceremony
I
itself.
mean that they're not participating; they're working it.
Well,
I mean,
that's
they're feeding it.
participating. That's
I
like
guess, yeah,
they're
I get
attending
it.
it.
But
They're attending it. They're
participating
there.
and attending are in different.
No, they're not. No, like if you're working as part of the ceremony, you're definitely participating in it. Like and I think they should be obligated to provide them whatever product they seek to purchase and everything like that. You could fine them for not doing that. But as far as them refusing to attend a ceremony or cater anything like that, I think that's where I would probably draw the line. I would say no, you can't punish them for doing that. They'll provide these people the product. They'll give these people the materials to do what they want to do. They should be obligated to do that much, and anything past that, I don't think they should be obligated to attend any ceremony that they don't wish to attend. That to me is
I
the point
mean,
where it becomes a little bit too far.
I guess. I mean, I get it. But at the same time, that's why we have private businesses. The Elks can discriminate against anybody they goddamn want to. And so can the Knights of Columbus. And
I'm just trying to establish some sort of compromise that we respect people's freedom of association, but
I
also
guess I
ensure
get
that
what you're
people are
saying, but
not discriminated against
I don't
unreasonably.
understand why we have to compromise in the first. That's what I'm saying. Like society wants to even
Well,
compromise in the
because
first place on something like
there's a
liberty
balance you have to reach.
or like
Because there's two
equality.
different rights that
I
need to
keep
be
saying
protected.
liberty, but equality. It's equality. Like
Because
that's
there's a
no
balance
one.
between two different rights that need to be protected. There's the right to the freedom of association and the right to not be discriminated against in business and in things like employment. And I like as far like I said, my personal line
Why
where I
in
would draw
business?
it
But
would
that's what
be
I don't get either. You choose to make money. You choose to go into the public arena. That's what I'm saying. If you're a church, you should absolutely not be forced to marry anyone. If you're a church, you should be able to say, no, you are homosexual. We do not hold homosexual
well.
weddings here.
So what's the difference there at the bakery then?
Church is not okay. I know
A
that.
religious institution is a religious
I know they're
institution
serving.
regardless whether they're
Yeah, I know
profit.
they're right. I mean, exactly. It is different.
Even
It's
churches profit.
I mean, I understand that. That's a right. That's their right. They're gathering for that specific reason, whether they end up profiting from it or doing charity or collecting tithe, whatever. They're
Mhm.
gathering for a specific reason. It is not to be a business serving the public. It is, you know what I mean? It's a congregation.
Yeah, but like I'm saying, like the reason that there has to be a compromise somewhere is because both sides have legitimate claims to rights that they feel are deserved to be protected. And the right to the freedom of association can often conflict with the right to not be discriminated against. And I think that there's a balance you have to find there to where you have a reasonable compromise. There are certain social obligations that are, you know, obligatory to be participated in. It's mandatory that you must provide a certain product to somebody. You must, if somebody comes to you wishing to purchase materials for whatever reason, I think that's fine. But and you can find somebody who doesn't comply with that. But like I said, like it comes down to the forced participation, the attendance, and everything of the ceremonies. Like that's where I'll draw my personal line. Like I do think you need to find that compromise because it's not just one right we're worrying about protecting here. There's two conflicting rights that like are fundamentally not opposed to each other, but can oftentimes have friction. Let's say. You can understand that, right? How those two principles would conflict with each other, and I don't think it's necessarily a partisan issue because I think both
I don't know though.
sides
No, I
believe in
understand.
freedom of
I get
association.
I do. I get what you're saying, but at the same time, like that I mean, you're making no one's taking away that right. No one forced you to open up a business to serve the public. No one forced you to do that. That's
If
the
you're
difference
forcing
to me.
someone to go into business with somebody that they do not wish to go into business with, then yes, then there is force being applied.
Okay, but why
You
are
are
they
being
denying to
forced
go
to
into business?
associate.
I'm saying like discriminating,
Well,
and why are they discriminating? Are they discriminating
because
based
both
on
sides
race,
are kind of
religion?
wrong. Because both sides are kind of wrong on it. One side is seeking to discriminate in some way, and the other side is trying to say, well, no, you should not be able to choose who you associate with. And like it's a strange thing because I think both sides would agree on it based on I'm not saying this in a negative way, but based on their own self-interest. I don't think somebody on the left would appreciate it if say like an Islamic bakery was shut down because oh hey they didn't want to serve some Christians or whatever like anything like that. I don't like or not to shut down, but heavily fined to the point where they're almost bankrupt, and it's really sort of intentional to do that.
Yeah, no, that would be
Um,
totally wrong for them to
yeah,
not serve Christians. I mean,
yeah, and
that's
so
it.
like
I
in
mean, that's
that
all there is
case,
to
the
it.
left would be arguing for the freedom of association, and that's my issue is like it goes both ways, and like we can have the argument about like what's most likely to actually occur, but when we're getting down to the principle of it, it could affect both ways just as negatively,
Yeah,
so
absolutely, and it needs to be consistent. But that's what I mean. I don't business for the public. Like no one's
Would you
forcing
say
you to do
would you
that.
say a
I
Muslim
don't.
should be
So hold on,
forced to go to a
hold on a second. I live in America. I have freedom of religion. I have speech. I have all these things, and I decide to open up a business, which I know operates by different rules. There's different tax rules. There's different social rules, and I know this when I open up a business. Now that since I haven't opened up a business, if I don't want to, I'm not like this, me, I'm not like this. But if I don't want to talk to an Arab, if I don't want to talk to a gay, if I don't want to talk to a Christian, if I don't want to talk to a Jew, I don't have to do that. And there's no law, there's no fines or anything like that. But when I make that choice that I am going to go into this public sector and accept the rules of society that everyone is created equal, because that's what our
It is a
society is
private
based off
company
of.
still. It is still a private company.
No one's forcing you, though. That's what I'm saying. You give up. That's what I'm saying. You give up.
The
You
government is.
willingly give some of that up. That's it.
If you're
No one's
deciding to
forcing you to do
punish
so.
them, if you're deciding to punish them for them making the decision to not associate with a certain group of people, then you are forcing them. There is force that's being applied there. That fine or however you seek to punish them, whether you outright put them out of business or just try to bankrupt them through fines, like that is force. That is government force. I don't see
So
how you can
wait,
say that's
how is that
not.
government force? That's what I'm saying. Like, see, you can't keep moving the bar.
I'm not
There's
moving the
already
bar.
no. You're moving the bar though. You want to move the problem. You can't do that.
Okay,
Why
so
would you do that? You
put,
can't do that. You
paint the
made the
scenario you're
choice.
talking about. Paint the
You
scenario you're talking
made
about,
the
though.
choice to
If
open a
If an Islamic
business.
bakery wants to discriminate against a Christian wedding, they don't want to participate in a Catholic wedding, a Catholic ceremony, anything like that. Like so they should be fined,
So
potentially
hold
to the
on.
point of being put out of
Let's define
bankruptcy.
participate, because I was looking at the story. All they had to do was bake them a goddamn cake, right? They didn't have to fucking go to the wedding and all this bullshit.
What do you mean? There's a catering
Like they didn't
business.
have to go to the wedding. They just had to bake the cake for the wedding.
I believe it was
The
also a
original
cater. I
thing.
believe it was also a catering business though. They wanted catering as well, I believe.
Well, I don't think that's true.
Well, like I said, like if the only contention was the fact that they wanted to provide, they wanted to be provided a product, I think that should be obligatory. You should be obligated to sell any product to anybody. But like I said, I think there's a difference between that and compulsory attendance to something that you don't really wish to participate in. Then
And that's another thing too. No one really faults like businesses that theme themselves either, right? So if you say like we're a Jewish wedding thing, right? It's not necessarily Jewish. You're not discriminating. You're
for
saying
some
that
reason it's different
we
when it
are
gets into business.
specifically no, but I'm saying though, but that's okay because you're like I'm really good at Jewish weddings. I don't know nothing about Arab weddings and Christian weddings, but I'm really good at Jewish weddings. So
Hmm.
this is like we specialize in Jewish weddings. Okay, great. No discrimination, right? You decided. But when you decide to say, yes, we do weddings, we're just a wedding company. That's what I'm saying. These people want their pie and then they want to eat it too. And that's just not how it works
I think we're talking
in
about
a
two different things
society of
though.
equality.
Like
But no, we're not.
if you're comparing a
No, we're
religious
not.
church to a religious company, like
Hold on.
why is it that like say okay, if you're saying that like a Jewish synagogue should not be obligated to participate in an Islamic wedding or a Christian wedding or something like that, why should a Jewish bakery or a Catholic bakery be obligated to participate in that same wedding?
No, what I'm saying is like, you know what I'm saying? They're saying like, I was giving the example that's not discrimination, specialized. Right? Like why? Okay, why weren't they a Christian bakery, like a Christian bookstore? You see Christian bookstores because they wanted to serve everyone except for one specific part of the population that they didn't. That they decided not to serve. That's discrimination.
It is
How is that
discrimination.
not
I'm
discrimination?
not saying it's not discrimination, but
Why should discrimination be legal? You're a public business. You're not a private business.
it is
You're
a
not
private
a
company.
private institution.
It absolutely is a private company. Like a lot of most small businesses are private companies. Like, it's
It's not
not.
private business. There's a difference between private company and private business. I mean, there's legal precedence. The
Yes,
Elks is a private business.
but
Walmart is a public business.
yes, it's publicly traded. Like it's publicly owned.
Well,
Like,
no, it's not just that though. I mean, it's literally like there for the public or it's
but
private.
private ownership, private ownership does exist in this country. There are plenty of private
Yeah, it does.
monopolies.
No, private ownership does exist, and
Yeah.
and it says you cannot discriminate against consumers or
A private company is really allowed to do pretty much whatever they want, as far as a
I
lot
mean,
of those things.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you want to
Whether they
be,
should or whether they should or not is a different question.
no, they do.
But
If
what
you
is
want to,
actually allowed?
if you, I mean, that's another thing too. If the Elks doesn't have to cater no damn gay wedding or anybody's wedding that they don't want to.
Okay, but what
But
exactly
there's
is
a
the
difference.
difference? Well, I don't understand why there's a separation. Like, okay, if a you're pretty much saying that if a say a Catholic church or a Christian church didn't want to participate in a gay wedding, that's fine. But if a even just providing the products, even just providing the cake and whatnot, if a bakery wishes to
But
do
that's
the
what I'm
exact
saying. You already
same,
have. What I'm saying is you already have. You
huh?
can't have your cake and eat it too. So you're saying the Elks is saying we want our freedom of association. So we're making a choice to do this and follow these rules for freedom of association with a business. We'll have a smaller clientele. Okay. So the bakery in this instance, I know I'm not saying these people think like this way or I'm demonizing, but it's like, so they're like, we want the benefits of, you know, the public and that, so they have to play by the public rules, basically. So they gave up their freedom
I
of
agree. Like I said, I
association
agree to a
by
certain extent.
choice. By choice. They gave up their freedom of association by choice, is what I'm
I
saying.
don't think anybody's given up their freedom of association by choice. So you're saying that, okay, if a bunch of Nazis came and wanted to go to some fucking gay bakery or gay, wedding ceremony place, wherever you want to call it, anything like that, like they should be forced to do so, regardless of how these people are divided. I just cannot. First of all, I see it as impractical. Like, first of all, I don't think how I can't understand how you could force somebody to compel somebody to associate with somebody in such a way that they have to be in the same room with each other. They have to attend each other's events, all sort of things like that. It just I can't even imagine how you'd implement that. People would protest that. They would refuse it. There would be it's not gonna work. I just can't even, like, if a bunch of gay caterers are are somehow being obligated by the government to go to some awful ceremony that they don't want to participate in. It doesn't even have to be a wedding or anything like that. Any ceremony
You
that
keep
they're
saying going
being
to some
obligated.
awful participation. We're not talking about going to any. See, you keep throwing these straw men out, man. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about providing a product. We're talking about serving the public.
Okay, but providing a product and providing a service isn't always the
Okay,
same
fine. You
thing.
provide the service, yes. But what I'm saying, if the if the Nazis went to a catering company and said, you know, we want to have a fucking
Any sort of
a
ceremony. It
wedding,
doesn't even have to be a fucking
you know what I
wedding.
mean?
It could be any sort of ceremony that they want to have, and if they're asking some company that has gay employees to cater it, and they don't wish to participate in it because they have gay employees, they don't feel, whether they don't feel safe or whether they just don't, like, fundamentally, like, based on their
Yeah,
beliefs, they don't want to participate in it. They don't believe in it.
right.
Is
And that's an hold on, and that's
that
another
wrong?
thing too. That's another thing too. Is no, but you wouldn't have these cases like it's just such a straw man slope, dude. You're not gonna have
I
fucking
understand that
Nazis
one.
marching into gay weddings and in the government like strong arming them into fucking things. There's
Dude, I
things like
guarantee if 4chan
there are
heard this
things, dude.
conversation, it would happen tomorrow. It would happen
There are
tomorrow.
things. There are things like, you know. Oh yeah, I would love to. Our schedule's busy. Oh, when's the wedding? I'm sorry, we're booked up. And then obviously, I mean, if it shows that they were lying and discriminating, then they broke the law. However, what are the
Yeah.
chances of them being fucking, you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. So
It's arguable whether
The
they actually
Nazis are
broke
just
the
gonna
law,
like,
though.
the Nazis are just gonna pound and pound and pound and pound at the fucking desk until they clear the schedule? No. Okay.
I just don't understand how you could compel somebody to have any sort of association. with another.
You're not compelling. You're not compelling anyone, though. That's what I'm saying. You assume that opening up a business, you are to play by the same laws as the business is supposed to play by the same rules as the citizen. There's absolutely no.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
You change like the rules of when you do certain things. So you as a citizen have your rights. But what I'm saying, like when you do certain stuff, it's kind of like when I go sky.
Discriminate. Citizens discriminate all the time. Like what about sexual
Yes,
preferences?
they are. They
You
are.
discriminate every day when you if you have sex. You have sexual preferences,
Right.
don't you?
Yeah, and that's free because you have freedom of association. I agree.
Right, but like that's
you don't want to.
but like a
Okay,
company's
so
not
hold on.
held to the same standard.
So hold on. Yeah, exactly. Nor should they be.
Citizens
if they're
are free to
benefiting
discriminate in
from
their social lives.
If they're benefiting from the public, so they can say, we really, really hate orange people or purple people, right? So we're green people. We really hate purple people a lot. Okay, but we live in a free society that's equal. There's law. We have whatever. We live in America. Okay, and liberty and equality. So, but I really hate purple people. So let's see here. I'm a person that hates purple people. I'm green, and I never talked to a purple person in my life. But there are a lot of purple people. So I decided that, you know what? I don't feel like working anymore or whatever. I want to open up my own business. But I'd have to serve purple people. So either serve fucking purple people, or you say, you know what? Or I could do a private club.
You don't feel that's at all totalitarian whatsoever. And also, how do you not say, like? How do you say?
How is that? How would you even label that as a totalitarian?
How would you say that's not compulsory association?
That's what I'm saying. I'm illustrating that when you do certain things in somewhere, you're giving up the choice right then and there. You're giving up your choice of a free. So you are willingly giving up your choice of.
As far as the law currently stands, a private company is not necessarily giving up its right to the freedom of association when they step into the market. They're free to serve really whoever they want to serve. You're not obligated to serve anybody legally, no matter what the grounds are. Now, when it becomes discrimination, obviously, like I said, we have two different principles butting heads with each other, and they're not necessarily both either 100% right or wrong. It's just the fact that they conflict with each other, But it's I can't really understand how it's like you can totally negate the fact that they are, if you're going to fine them, especially heavily to the point where it's going to bankrupt them, or if you're going to shut them out of business, just out of hand, 100%, just take them down.
Here's a good way to illustrate it. When you open up a business, you are held to a different standard than everybody else.
Socially, legally though, that's as far as private companies go, that's not necessarily true. If that were true, dude,
legally you are. What do you mean?
My job would not
there are different laws for business.
If that were true, my job would not fucking suck the way it does, dude. Like there are plenty of things that are not right where I work, and they're done every day. And
sure, and that's a problem. But I'm saying it is against the law, and it should be against. And that's my point. Discrimination should be against the law. You give up. No, that's what I'm saying. It should be against the law. So that was the correct decision in fining the baker because they broke the fucking law. The law was actually applied.
Right, but like one of the things they talk about here in this debate is an ought. It's a big difference. What actually is legal. And
right.
What actually
but I'm saying, okay, yes. So that is, and that's what ought to be. What happened was correct.
Like,
you know what I'm saying?
But so you understand why? Like, do you at least understand why some people disagree on some grounds, like to further extents than some others? Like
yes.
I said, like where my
I understand, but why? Because I understand, do I have to concede to them that they're right in some way? No, I do understand why they think that way, and they're wrong.
100% right. I'm not saying that you need. I'm not saying you need to acknowledge that they're 100% right. But you can't say that it's 100% irrational or 100% illogical.
It's not. I didn't call it irrational. I called it wrong.
Okay, well that's fine. That's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean? It's not irrational. It's wrong because I mean, to me, you give up certain privileges when you do certain things in a country. As a citizen, you have every right,
I
and
think
you know what I mean, in the world.
if your company goes public, if your company goes public and it's no longer a private company, that's absolutely true. When you're a private company, I think primarily you can do really whatever you want, and whatever mistakes you make, you will feel it in your wallet, that your punishment.
Right,
I
but
just
you
don't.
won't. But you won't because you'll be able to
It happens
discriminate.
all
You'll
the
see things
time.
like
It happens.
it
I don't
doesn't
accept that.
though.
It absolutely does.
Does it?
I used the example of airlines last time we were talking about this.
Okay.
It absolutely does. You could see things change in real time when there are public outrages towards corporations. It happens all the time. This country is filled with protesters and activists and everything that are incredibly influential in the
Okay.
market. So that's one of the things I have an argument with people all the time on the right is what their view of social justice is. Like me, I don't. Social justice is not an ideology in of itself. Social justice is a method of pushing forward ideas. At the end of the day, what is the invisible hand of the market, if anything more than not just social justice? Obviously, the ideas behind what social activists will be pushing will change. But at the end of the day, that is the response that people are dependent upon for the market to adapt to things that we don't find socially acceptable. So
Okay.
if we find out that a corporation is somehow mistreating its workers, here's the thing: a lot of people know that iPhones are made in sweatshops in China, but we all buy our iPhones, and we don't say we can't, we're not raising a big stink about that. If people are still buying them, we're not boycotting Apple, but we should be. That's one of the things social justice should be focusing on. And
Right, and that's it. Should and is, and
yeah,
that's the problem. You can't just rely on social justice or the market principle in that sense to protect people. You cannot. You absolutely cannot. Which was why you need sanctions and laws that people can't discriminate against people. And why you can't tell businesses, even if they're a private business, look, you're not allowed to discriminate. When you are in behind this counter from the hours of 8 to 5 or whatever it is, you are not allowed to discriminate. When you get off work and if you want to yell, I hate N words and never talk to a black person or a Jew or whatever your choice is of hating somebody, fine. No worries then.
like
But
I
when you are
said,
serving the
when it
public
comes to
and your
publicly traded
intention,
companies,
when your
like
intention is to serve the public,
okay,
then you
but
should absolutely be held
a
accountable.
private company's intention is not necessarily to serve the public. It is to serve whoever their customers are. They have the right to associate with whoever they really please. When you're a publicly traded company, you are held to higher standards and you are held accountable to the public at large. A private company is not necessarily held to those same standards. It's just not how it works. Again, the difference between is and ought. I understand if you're saying it should work differently, then that's a different conversation. But as far as you know, as the law actually is, as it actually currently stands, it's not necessarily wrong as far as the law is concerned. Like it's again, I think we should probably get back on with the debate because like we're only at 19 minutes in.
Yeah, we're not gonna make it, man. I can't do this tonight. I gotta get off here. We're gonna have to pick up where we left off. I think it's still a good conversation, though. I
Yeah.
do. I do. I just,
Well, we got
you
20
know,
minutes in. Yeah, I don't think we discussed that like anything that they were currently. We got really sidetracked there, but
yeah,
it was a good
we get
conversation.
sidetracked very easily. Yeah, it was. No, it was a really good conversation. I think that I would much rather talk about things like, well, I mean, I mean, how things are important, but I'd like to talk about how things like more philosophical concepts. You know what I mean?
Well,
Um,
I think a lot of this does come down to how you look at it philosophically. I think it at the end of the day, do you understand that there are both principles that are conflicting with each other, and I think as long as me and you can agree that neither side is being 100% totally irrational about it, it's not 100% based on hatred, all these
yeah.
sort of things. We're
I
not
mean, it
like
depends on the subject matter too, though.
and the person you're talking to as well. Some people obviously they're gonna have a more dull-minded, sort of just not that like they're gonna have opinions on it they haven't really thought through, and like there's a lot of people like that, obviously. But there were more reasonable arguments behind a lot of the things that I think a lot of people just sort of misconstrue to be based out of nefarious motives.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I agree with that whole statement about never putting a motive to somebody, but
Mhm.
I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, it's correct to do things because it's correct, right? If someone has a motive, you put a motive behind them. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, somehow pointing out facts or things like that is like a bad thing sometimes. I just don't dig that. Like, yes, they're a bad thing for the sake, anything for the sake of it is bad. But for instance, if someone has a communist motive or a white nationalistic motive, then fuck yes, I'm going to assign a motive to them. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah, of
that is their
course.
motivation. I mean, that's
But being a communist doesn't necessarily mean that you're like some authoritarian, potentially genocidal motherfucker. And being a
no,
white
and honestly,
nationalist,
not even necessarily. Maybe an ideology. See, that's it with the
there's a lot
ideology
of
and action.
libertarian communists, and I'm not really willing to just 100% dismiss the fact that it's conceivable.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
talk to a lot of them.
the dude downstairs, a guy that I live with. I mean, even people with terrible ideas in their actions aren't terrible people. Now, I would still say that depending on the ideas, they're still terrible people because they think that way, but their actions are they can get along in society fine. I mean, I'm pretty sure my neighbor is like extremely racist and like I mean, just I kind of
Why do you
know it
say
just from
that?
things he's said about
Like in
other
behind closed
like
doors?
yeah, just actually, you know what? That's what's scary about it, not behind closed doors. It wasn't like these terrible good things, but I guess to me it was like what he was willing to say in the open. You know what I mean?
You see, the thing is, I have not encountered a great deal of racist people in my life, besides the fact that in passing, I've encountered a lot of uncomfortable people that were like my stepdad's black, and a lot of times whenever me and my stepdad would go anywhere, especially when I was a kid, people would look at us weird because my stepdad's like this 6'4" black guy, and I'm like this tiny little white ginger kid, and people just kind of looked at us like that's an odd pairing.
Right.
So like I definitely got a lot of uncomfortable stares, some concerned looks from people. People might have thought something wrong was going on in some way. I've had those sort of interactions, um, especially in schools, among teachers, and
Right.
so but like there's a lot of things where it's like you're gonna find people who are just sort of radical in their how should I phrase it? Like the way they treat other people, like they act sort of irrational and radically towards them. Like they see somebody that looks different, dresses different, or any sort of thing like that. And it's largely just based out of ignorance. And that's one of the things I always talk about with education. This is why I'm an advocate of religion in schools being taught through a historical lens rather than through the lens of faith or tradition or anything like that. Um, I think the ultimate thing, if we ever want to reduce the amount of potential discrimination, reduce the amount of racism in this country, like just the general number of how many people we have in this country with racist views, any sort of bigoted views. If you want to get rid of that, it's only ever going to be done through education. You have to take it out at
Yeah,
the root
absolutely,
cause.
man. Absolutely.
This is where the state's necessary in education. This is where we need to say, okay, no, we don't need to divorce religion from education entirely. We need to teach everybody about every culture, whether it's race, religion, anything like that. You need to be taught the differences. You need to be taught the similarities. You need to be taught how you're compatible and how certain things are incompatible. And you need to have the general knowledge of things because the number one thing is the fear of the unknown, the fear of the other, and that's where a lot of the ignorance comes from. It's not based on an intelligent view, an informed perspective on all these cultures that they fear, whether it's a culture or race or
I
anything
don't
like
think that's
that.
where the ignorance comes from. I think fear comes from the ignorance,
I think it's just a primal
essentially.
instinct that people who are just generally uninformed about other cultures, uninformed about other races and religions, shit like that. I think it's just sort of the natural, primal instinctual reaction, the thing to have. Like it's just
And then how do you, but then, yeah, I mean, I agree definitely for a lot of people. Like, I mean, my neighbor, for
it's
instance, isn't the
dull-minded.
brightest guy. He's very dull-minded. But,
Yeah.
but how do you excuse the smart people? You know what I mean?
Who's smart? That is a racist or anything like this. Like people, yeah. Like whenever I've asked that question before, people have said that to me. I don't understand this concept of a smart racist. Like Richard Spencer gets called a smart racist by in some certain terms by some people. Like they say that he has actual arguments and shit behind him. No, he doesn't. I've seen his debates. I've watched Richard Spencer debate people. I've watched him debate people that I agree with on many things. And he sits there for 2 hours, 3 hours at a time, throwing out personal insults and just fucking gloating about himself. And he literally will say that like it is right because I'm right. His argument in almost every scenario comes down to might makes right. This guy is not smart. He is a pseudo intellectual at best. He is a joke. There's somebody that has racist like ethno nationalist views or anything like that. They are primal beings. They are a step above cavemen. They're not to be taken
I don't
seriously.
know, man. I don't think that's true, man. I don't know. I met people in my lifetime that were smart, capable. Yeah, they had batshit crazy
I'm not
ideas when it
talking
came to
about race
race
realist and shit. Like they're
and
like I do
certain
believe
like
race
that.
is
But
real. I do believe race is a real thing. It's not a social construct. But
no, I'm not talking
to
about. I'm talking about
base
people that were straight up racist that were otherwise, besides their kooky, batshit, crazy um, views on. I don't know. This girl I knew, her dad or whatever. This girl I dated, her dad. He was like a pretty smart, like capable dude, but he was fucking racist, dude. He was straight up racist, and I don't know, man. I don't think that you can attribute all racism to just some people being dull-minded. I think a lot of it you can.
no,
Um,
there's probably plenty of engineers that are racist. I understand that. There's people who can be incredibly skilled, incredibly talented, incredibly smart in some fields, and completely fucking nitwitted dumbasses in other fields. It doesn't. I'm not saying that like there are going to be neurologists that don't understand rocket science. That's pretty fucking obvious. So like
well, I mean, I don't know, man. Yeah,
I'm not saying that just because they're a generally capable, like, socially functional person that they can't be racist. But generally, I think people understand that the majority of racists, at least in this country, are just
yeah. I
very
mean, yeah, for
nitwitted
sure.
yeah.
The majority, like Joe, racists. I mean, they're, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Just
it's not
dull-minded.
something they put a great deal of thought into. It's not something they actually evaluate a whole lot. It's collectivist, it's tribalist, it's just instinctive to them. Like it's self-interested and I think the majority of people who maybe you might consider to be a bit more to be taken a bit more seriously that you actually feel they have legitimate arguments that you need to debate and everything like that. Those sort of people are mostly in it for their own personal gain. A lot of people who preach any sort of racial unity, racial collectivism, anything like that. A lot of them are just con men. The people that you think, well, like he seems like a smart guy. He seems like maybe an otherwise a decent person, but he's a racist. So like that seems confusing to me at least. And so I think a lot of those people they might not even actually really believe the shit they say. I think they're just con men that understand that, hey, through the pathway of racial unity and racial collectivism and whatnot, I can benefit. I can be the leader. And that's one of the things that Richard Spencer was recently asked in one of the debates I've seen him in was, would you want to be a serf in your own fields in this feudalist fucking white nationalist monarchy he was suggesting? Literally, he got to the point where he was defending monarchy. That's how stupid
Right.
this guy is. Yeah. Yeah, like it's not a defensible position. Monarchy, we don't recognize monarchy in this country. We don't recognize ethno-nationalist claims to anything. On the same basis, like why is on the same basis of why is somebody afforded the divine right to rule through a monarchy. What gives any race the divine right to a land or anything like that? And that, like we talked about earlier, Israel and Palestine, the conflict between there. I don't really respect a religious or a racial claim to a land. I respect a nation's
No,
claim to a land. I respect a state's claim to a land. That's it's a different thing.
I only respect in its usefulness, I guess you could say. I actually actually don't respect any kind of claim to any land really, but I respect the usefulness of it, if that makes sense. Like ethically, I don't
It's
really
necessary. I understand what you're saying,
like,
though.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And until every single society, every culture throughout the world becomes compatible with each other, it's necessary. But at the end of the day,
Right.
globalization is inevitable.
And that's another thing that practicality has to play into ethics to an extent. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I'm a relativist in that sense, or I don't even know what you should call me, but I I think that if you can do the most ethical thing, you should. But sometimes the most ethical thing is so far like gone, like the concept of like, you know, um, not having nations. That concept is so far gone that we can't go back. We can't just make it ethical one day. Like we can't just do it the ethical way all
Well,
of a sudden. You know what I
because
mean? Because
what
it
do you
would be
have instead of nations? You have a one world government, man. Like, imagine, like, we have three layers of government in this country as it is: local, state, and federal. Imagine adding a fourth layer on top of that. Now we're not unified with all these other countries with this, international globalist regime above us. And I say regime. We'll say structure, right? Globalist structure above us, on top of the federal level and everything. It sounds to me like madness. And I think if the idea of erasing borders, you know, the thing is, a lot of people are very supportive of the open borders, and maybe even just eliminating borders entirely and whatnot. And you'll find people on both sides that are actually, like the far right and caps and whatnot. They're all open borders. They're all strongly in favor of globalization. Why? Because, oh man, their money can go far in other countries. And on the left, for
well.
obvious reasons, they're against the very existence of borders out of hand, regardless of for whatever reason they exist.
I mean, I certainly believe in borders as the world sits right now. Like I said, I
Yeah,
mean, you know,
any
I don't
reasonable person probably does.
I don't necessarily think that. I think immigration is a good thing. I do. I think
Um,
that.
to a capitalist country, it generally is.
Well, I was gonna say like part of the. I don't know exactly.
Mass unvetted immigration is where I draw the line.
Globalization is good. It's how it's applied by
I'm
the
even in favor
dudes
of
that we
mass
elect.
immigration. I'm even in favor of mass immigration. It just has to be vetted, and we have to know the people we're taking in. That's my only objection. Like I don't think you should just have people come in and live in fucking refugee camps for months and months and just not adapt themselves to the society. They should be immediately integrated into society. They should be we should have some sort of program to set them up with jobs. We should have some sort of program to keep them afloat for the time being until they get themselves on their feet. I'm totally in favor of mass immigration because one thing I understand, and I've always tried to convince a lot of people that, like, don't be afraid of moving to a bigger city because the more people there are around you, the more opportunities there are around you, and immigration plays a part in that. And some of the most brilliant minds within all capitalist economies that have ever innovated anything, have come from all across the world. And
Well, yeah. I mean, and most of the good jobs in the United States are in bigger cities. I mean, more, just central hubs. I
absolutely,
mean,
absolutely,
you
and
know,
that's why smaller towns often sometimes suffer because people don't immigrate often to
right,
smaller towns. It's much
right.
rarer for to see immigrants in smaller towns, and so obviously the bigger cities are the only economies that are really growing. But like if you were to have more and more immigration of people who were there to provide opportunities and also uh, participate in the opportunities already there, then that is a net benefit to the economy. That is a natural growth that is totally reasonable. And so, like, I think a lot of people are really just wrong on like anybody that claims to support capitalism. If you don't support some sort of mass immigration, I don't really understand how you expect a whole lot of markets to grow. You need your customer bases to grow. You
Right.
need a general bigger community of people to sell shit to, and also to employ and to create new opportunities for employment and service and all these sort of things. Totally reasonable. You just have to make sure that the people you're bringing in are the people that are compatible with your society. And
Yeah. And see, going back to the whole like one world government thing and how, see, I think it's I mean, maybe a little bit of a stretch. I know it's a big difference between physically being somewhere and not physically being there. But if you think about it, we have sort of a, I know it doesn't encompass the whole world, but we have a one world government in social media, and we have dictators in those governments, basically. But if you think
Zuckerberg?
about it, we can Zuckerberg, or I mean, I
It's
don't
not
know.
really a government though. Like they
It's not
regulate the
really
internet. They're
okay,
companies.
but
Yeah.
it's a weird kind of like dictatorial
Yeah.
democracy though, because of like the consumers being able to, I don't know. I mean, maybe not so much as the airlines, but when people complain on Facebook, they generally try to do something about it. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. But at the same time, Facebook does what Facebook wants to do. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
at the peril of the people sometimes. And I mean, same with Twitter, but it's almost like you do have this kind of almost half-assed one world, maybe not government, but nation almost.
I think the
I
closest
mean,
thing we have to one world governments in today's day and age are entities like the UN and the EU, international alliances with legislative power over a multitude of countries. That is one of the things that I typically oppose. I'm for economic
right?
globalization and I'm for immigration between countries, even in cases of mass immigration,
Yeah,
reasonably, of course. And but like the thing is like when you have a government body that actually decides legislation and policies for countries that they don't 100% represent, like the UN and the EU, they're not 100% obligated to protect any individual country. They're there to serve the interest of a multitude of countries. So they're representing a lot more people now with a lot more different interests. And so they're not like really, it's not the same thing as having your own personal federal government for your country that's only obligated to protect those
no, it
sets of
is totally
rights.
different. And maybe I shouldn't use the term one world government, but it is almost like a
Multinational
separate. I
governments.
would consider like Facebook almost like a separate nation, or
Well, it's just it's really at the end of the day, it's just a publicly traded company that's international. It's global even. That's really at the end of the day. They have a lot of control online because they are partnered with just about
I
every
just
other
I don't
social
know.
media platform.
I
Just
don't think that.
recently, I got some
I
comments
mean,
removed on Facebook because I
the
did
internet
some good.
itself, though, dude, is what I'm saying is like, or even like social media giants. I mean, yeah, they're technically this, technically that, but I mean, I see this shift towards like this whole. I could see easily see this shift towards like digital nations and stuff like that. I mean, absolutely, and I think that like they kind of already are ones. I mean, half-ass shitty ones. They kind of are. I mean, yes, they're a company, but it's very different than just any company. I mean, these are platforms where people meet and socialize, and they might not physically be there, but there's emotional investment. There's, like I said,
I believe they have an
communication.
obligation to protect freedom of speech. But here's the thing: like I'll use I'm a dork, but I'll use World of Warcraft as an example because they're global as well. They're multi-international. But if you play it in China, it's heavily censored. There's no gore or anything like that. It's not like there's no dark arts or anything like that involved in it. No, they take a lot of the mysticism out of it, and they're allowed to do that. Like their government decides this is what's necessary. This is what our country wants. Whether this is what we're going to decide to do. That's fine. They can regulate the internet in their country all they want. That it's not if as long as it doesn't affect any other country. That's fine to me. That's their problem in my opinion. But then if you were to say like if the UN were to censor a part of the internet, say okay, oh now we're going to take all the gore for World of Warcraft out of the EU servers, and then if we were to have some sort of entity do that in America, like that's wrong. That's awful. That's not a country deciding that we want to do this. And really, we're just talking about like video game censorship is the example I'm using in general. Like any sort of
Mhm.
entertainment censorship. Like if a country decides they want to do that, then that's their own fucking problem. That's for their people to deal with. It's not It's not America's issue. It's not. It shouldn't be the UN's issue or anything like that. But then, if something multinational, some sort of government body like that, wanted to censor something like, on the internet, that becomes a bigger issue now because, okay, well, who exactly is deciding to do this? Germany didn't decide to do this for Germany. The UK didn't decide to do this for the UK. Like what does France get out of this? Did France decide to do this? No, it's the second unaccountable government body that's not obligated to protect that nation's rights. Though that people,
Well, I think that the UN should definitely not be getting in matters such as the UN should be there to protect rights and protect rights only. There should be an established, however you establish it, there should be an established, kind of like a constitution, right, of rights, human rights, and that's what the UN should be enforcing. And other than that, they should be, you know, leaving it alone. You know what I mean?
yeah, like the point I'm making is that like I'm for the economic freedom to globalize, but I'm not generally for the globalization of government bodies or international government bodies in any sense. I don't think it's. I'm not saying that the UN should be abolished, the EU should be abolished. I do support Brexit. I think Brexit's fine. I support any country's right to secede from any state, any body, any entity whatsoever. No country has any obligation to participate in any sort of alliance at all.
Yeah, I don't see an ethical. I just think it might be. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it turns out. It looks might be good. It might be bad for the economy. It might not be the right move. But yeah, I mean, I agree in this that anybody should be able to. Right. If they wanted to pull out of the EU, then they should be able to pull out of the. Fuck
Even
it.
in
You know
cases
what I
like
mean?
Catalonia and Spain, like, I support Catalonia's right to secede from Spain. Like absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I support their right to do it. I might think they're doing it for the right or wrong, depending on the situation, but that's beside the point. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, if they want to, then
Hell, if California wants to secede from the American Union, why the fuck not? It's their right.
well, that gets complicated though.
I'm pretty sure there would be a resistance. People would be pissed. But
Yeah, people would be pissed. I mean, I'm not saying that either one, but it would be bad for California and it would be bad for the United States if California
it
succeeds.
would be awful for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party would never win an election again if New York and
No, I
California
mean
left the Union.
it would be, but what I'm saying is the impact to the economy from California, dude, to the United States would be terrible. But
Oh,
I
that's
don't
another
know.
thing. Oh yeah, we lose a huge primary source of income in this country. A
Right.
lot of them. Yeah.
And then California, though, I mean, they wouldn't get government, no federal.
It's funny because California is one of the most left-wing states in the union, probably the most left-wing states in the union, and it's the most capitalist in practice. Maybe aside from New York. Like
Yeah, I mean,
it's the ultimate evolution of capitalism there, as far as
that's what I'm saying.
capitalism within a regulated state.
It works well to an extent. I mean, the problem is, yeah, more checks and on certain things.
Yeah, but well, I
What
was
was I
gonna
gonna
say
say
it's like
though?
1:30 in the morning, and you probably want to get off here soon.
Oh yeah, for
I know
sure.
you
We
were
probably
planning on doing something earlier.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. Yeah, we
We'll
should
finish this
probably.
up some other time. We got through 20 minutes of it.
Yeah, definitely.
We need a third person to keep us on topic when we do this.
Yeah, we definitely need a moderator.
Yeah, someone
Definitely need a
like if we
moderator.
pause the video to talk about a specific point in the future, we gotta talk about that point and then continue the video. Not get sidetracked.
All right.
My bad.
All right.
We're
All
still
right, man.
learning.
That's what's up about. Still
Yeah.
learning. We'll get it. We'll get it.
Cool. Thanks for doing it, though, man. It was fun.
Yeah, dude, for sure. Yeah, no,
All right, I'll talk to you later,
it's
man.
always enjoyable. All right, brother, for sure.
Peace, bro.
Later.